good friends at CTV. I always want to thank them for being here and broadcasting. You know, I want to brag on them a little bit because I know in my first year as council, I chaired the technology committee, and we put some money into CTV. And I want to brag on them because they don't talk about this, but we are one of the few major cities that can broadcast live on 3 different streaming channels at the same exact time. So I want to thank our friends at CTV, because if you watch CTV, whether you're on YouTube or live or Facebook or what have you, this is a way that we can communicate to the public and folks not be here in person. And so again, let's just give a round of applause to our friends at CTV in the back. They do an amazing job. So I just want to thank them and the whole entire team. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this evening's community conversation on the capital budget and public hearing. First, I want to thank my colleagues, Councilmember Barroso de Padilla, who is here with me. Thank you to the viewing public and folks that are here. We're getting started late because if anybody knows, me and Councilmember Barroso de Padilla, we're Columbus kids, so we like to talk and engage with the community. So thank you all for entertaining us and allowing us to start a little bit late today. I also want to thank all of our department leaders as well as Mayor Ginther for proposing this budget tonight that we will be discussing, and all of the administrators who are here with us. Also want to thank, very importantly, our area commissioners and our civic associations who are here represented, and those who haven't been represented. They have been an instrumental part in this every single year. As you know, we go to our area commissioners, ask them for feedback. They send in those input to us as well as projects that they want to see. I want to thank also our community engagement team. We were able to go on bus tours with our neighbors in the far west side, as well as our neighbors in the east side, Driving Park area, to really get out and see and touch and feel these projects that folks are talking about. We are a city that is 225 square miles. We have 9 council members that each, yes, represent a different side of the city, but you are the resident experts. You drive your streets every single day. You are in your neighborhood. I'm never going to be on the south side every single day, right? And so I rely on you all. And so to get out and actually see and touch those things, not just get those input from you, is so critically important. So definitely want to thank all of our area commissioners and civic associations for all the work that they put in on a voluntary basis for this community, because that input is critically needed. We don't always necessarily agree on the path forward, or sometimes we can't meet those needs in a timely manner because it's urgent, but we try to get to it, and we want to make sure that your feedback is heard, it is valued, and we do see and appreciate all the work that you all put in. And of course, again, want to thank our residents. At the end of the day, when we talk about capital projects, yes, it's bricks and sticks. It's a lot of things underneath the ground, like clean drinking water and sewer systems. But at the end of the day, it's all about how do we have a better quality of life and more infrastructure for all of our residents. So thank you to all of you who are here with us tonight or joining us via virtual or streaming. The purpose of this hearing is to present the city's capital improvement budget and capital improvement programs to residents. Tonight's conversation is the 3rd public meeting in a series of 3 public conversations that we've had. So this is the 2nd in-person one. We've had 1 virtual one. The capital projects we are discussing tonight concern physical assets here in the city that I just described to you. So our roads, our waterways, and other physical infrastructure that we touch and feel every single day here in the city. We understand how important these infrastructure investments are, and for that reason, it has been a long-standing practice of Columbus City Council and the city to go out and seek resident information, but also been a long-standing practice of the city of Columbus to set aside a quarter from every dollar that we collect via the income tax for capital projects. So just think about that. The biggest and the largest revenue that the city brings in is our income tax. And what we have done is we've been prudent. We say we're going to take 25 cents of that, set it aside so that we can pay for our debt, pay for these capital projects, and have a robust capital budget every single year. That is the envy of some cities around this country, because we are able to do capital improvements, yes, large ones that take multiple years, but then also other smaller ones that we can target that the community wants to see get done. And that is because of our auditor and her steadfastness, as well as her predecessor, Auditor Dorian, and again, also our finance team and their fiscal management. So again, I want to thank them for that. The funding structure, as I said, it ensures that the city consistently puts out these budgets on an annual basis. It also ensures that the city's AAA bond rating ensures that the city can borrow money at a lower interest rate, which saves you, the taxpayers, those residents of Columbus, millions upon millions of dollars every single year because of that lower interest rate. Tonight's hearing will be simple in structure. We will start with presentations from our Department of Finance and Management, followed by presentations from Public Service, Recreation and Parks, Public Safety, the Department of Development, and also the Department of Public Utilities. Now listen, y'all bear with me, okay? Because listen, $1.99 billion is a lot of money to go through, okay? So we're gonna be patient with each other, and we'll get to the public comments. Councilmember Barosa Padilla and I have been at this now for 2 hearings now, so we will keep our questions limited to make sure that we get to our residents' responses and questions as quickly as possible. Following the presentations, as I said, we will have questions from council members that will then be followed from speakers who have signed up to speak tonight. If you didn't sign up to speak tonight, that is okay. Just raise your hand. Someone from our community engagement team, I see Cole, as well as I think I see Stanley as JP on my team as well. If you just get one of them, we'll make sure that we get your question answered and allow you to speak this evening. Depending on the specificity of your question, we will try to answer it the best tonight. If not, we will make sure we get back to you. And also for me, I always like to make sure that we are tracking our Facebook and YouTube feed. So if the questions or comments pop up on that, my team will best look at those and make sure that we address those in real time or when we get to the public comment period as well. The capital budget you'll hear about tonight is a proposed budget, not the final. It is through these public input processes and the community conversations that we will arrive at a final product that council will vote on, ideally before we go on break in August, so at the end of this month. So again, tonight's hearing, as well as the other ones, as well as the comments that we received from area commissions, as well as our bus tours will help to inform what that final capital budget looks like. I also want to point out that we will have information for you all to go to the website to see the capital improvements program. The program, or CIP as we call it, is the 6-year projection for the city. We don't want to go through 6 years. I mean, right now we're talking about $1.99 billion today, so I don't want to have you guys sit through 6 years of projections. We'll hit on a little bit of it in different departments, but also I'm going to make sure that you get the link that you can go to get all that information and digest that yourself. Again, with us tonight, we have Chris Long, Deputy Director in the Department of Finance and Management, my partner in good, as well as Steve Wenzel, Deputy Director in the Department of Public Service. We have Craig Murphy, our Deputy Director of Capital Conservation and Strategy in the Department of Recreation and Parks. And I always say to him, I'm not sure how you fit that on a business card, but he does. We also have Dan Giangardella, Deputy Director in the Department of Public Safety. Bill Webster, my other partner in good in the Department of Deputy Director in the Department of Development. And then last but not least, Tom Crawford, who is with us, the Capital Fiscal Manager for the Department of Utilities. Before I get started and we get into the presentations, I want to turn over to my colleague. Any opening remarks that you have before we get started?
Thanks, Chair Banks. And I just wanted to echo all of your thanks, both to CTV, to all of our deputy directors. We are usually the face that represents this body of work, but they are truly the ones. Last night there was a joke that we are now senior council members. I'm not sure how that happened 3 years in, but they are really represent what this work looks like in terms of the long game. And so I just want to thank them all for being here, and all of the folks who they represent, the good people who work at the City of Columbus. And I also just want to echo what you said. This capital budget is just a snapshot of a moment in time. It is one piece of a larger, much larger strategy for how we meet the needs of a growing city and such a large, sprawled out city like Columbus. And so it's important to give that context, I think, because it can be deflating sitting in this seat. I know know when I look around this room and see so many people who are friends and partners and advocates in this work alongside of us, if there is something that you see that really needs to get done in your community, and it may not be representative here, that means that does not necessarily mean it is not represented somewhere else in the priorities of the city. And so that's why this kind of conversation, a real conversation, some time to kind of learn, and it's a lot of information, but time for us to dig in and have conversations after this that aren't just about this budget, but really how do we get things done for the things that people care most about, right? You care about having a safe place to live, a safe place to walk and to move, a safe place for our kids to play. These are all priorities for all of us as a community. And so I want to echo that this is just a proposed budget, that these conversations and the input that you give is critically important to also put, this is an opportunity for us to learn as well, sitting alongside of all of our partners. So if there are concerns that aren't represented here, that you want to ensure that it is on our radar, that we can then address that. For myself in particular, I think as we talk about districts, this is my district. This is a place where I lived for 11 years on the south side of Columbus, and District 8 is very unique in that it is the largest in terms of land mass. Still as populated as the rest of the districts, but because of the, again, the sprawl of Columbus, and because the lower part of the district being once home to so many different industries, I'm sure in another 5 or 10 years, the district will look very, very different. It's also unique in that it is one of the only districts that also has two large pieces of two different sides of town. And so I think while we've directed some pieces of the capital budget to highlight where we are in terms of physically today as we're in the south side, some of the projects that are happening here, again, I want to share that this is not the only thing happening on the south side of Columbus. And so I think that that's critically important, especially as we talk about efforts like Link Us, our bus rapid transit system, that will literally change how we move in the city of Columbus, not just by bringing a bus, but also bringing all of the infrastructure improvements, meaning more sidewalks, more protected bike lanes, more roadways, more ways that people can move about the city. And while we've defined 3 of the 5 lines of Link Us, one of them will be here on the south side. And so soon we will begin that process and that conversation with folks here. But those infrastructure improvements that will come will be felt on every part of the city, not just on one of those bus lines. And so again, I think that's just important perspective as we have this conversation. Lastly, I just want to invite folks, we will be back on the south side on Thursday evening, myself and Councilmember Weich, to have a community conversation specifically focused on the south side, so folks can look at our social media. After the meeting, I'm happy to share more information, or our community engagement team is here to share more about that meeting. But while it's hosted here on the south side, obviously all of our capital budget hearings, whether they were virtual or Northside last night, or it feels like it's been a year, or south side today, this is a capital budget for the entire city of Columbus that really will focus on all parts of Columbus, because we inherently understand that the success of one of us depends on the success of all of us and the prosperity of every part of Columbus. So thank you all for being here this evening, and I turn the floor back to you, Chair.
Well, thank you, Council Member, and thank you, Chair of our Public Service Committee, which is one of the committees I think that touches our residents the most. And so thankful for all of your leadership and work on Link Us and so many other initiatives to make sure that we are having equitable investments in sidewalks and other infrastructure that residents desperately need. I will not say that I am a senior council member. I've been here 2.5 years, so that makes me a sophomore. So y'all don't be asking me no hard questions. I'm gonna send it to all these. I'm gonna send it to her. She's a senior member. That's what she said. But no, and again, happy to be here on the south side. My family, my mom's side of the family are proud Bulldogs, the Glovers, and everyone who played basketball at the old South High School. When the basketball court was on the stage, that's when you went to go die for the ball, you might be putting your life at risk to do it. So with that, I will stop my commentary, make sure we get into these presentations. We'll try to make them as swift as possible so we can get to our residents. And so with that, we will start first with our Department of Finance, and we have with us, again, Deputy Director Chris Long, who is with us.
Thank you, Chair Bankston, Councilmember Barosa de Padilla, Council President Harden, and all members of council. We really appreciate the opportunity to present Mayor Ginther's 2024 capital improvement budget for your time and consideration. And again, thanks to commission leadership here tonight, area residents. Appreciate your being here this evening, and for those who are joining remotely. As Chair Bankston mentioned, my name is Chris Long. I work in the Department of Finance for our Finance Director, Kathy Owens. And my goal tonight will just be to echo and expand on many of the comments you heard from Chair Bankston and Councilmember Barosa de Padilla a few minutes ago. You'll be hearing a lot of specifics from my colleagues up here this evening about specific capital projects in specific areas of the city for a specific purpose. Mine will be more from a higher level view of how does a capital budget come together, how do we fund it, what is finance's role in that process, and what are the next steps in that process as well. So appreciate your patience as I walk through some of these. It's never good when you start out with a technical glitch. That way? I'll just keep pointing and clicking until something happens.
Just everywhere.
I don't think it's user error. It could be user error, JP, you know that.
Well, as the Chair of Finance and Governance, technology is in finance and governance. I'm quite embarrassed. I don't know what's happening here. But no, I know that Deputy Director will get into it, so just bear with us as we get this presentation going. But I know, Deputy Director, you're going to go through some of the slides, and I hit on it, but if you can just talk about, again, that 25-cent set aside. I know that's part of the slide deck, and so just talk about that a little bit, the difference between operating budget and our capital budget.
Yep. So, as Chair Bankston mentioned, the city has two main budget cycles, right? We have operating budget, we have capital budget. As Chair mentioned, capital is infrastructure, right? It's the physical locations where city business occurs, which can sometimes be vehicles, as you'll hear from Deputy Director Gian Gardella tonight about fire apparatus, whereas operating budget is about programming. It's the staffing, it's the supplies, it's the services that we need to deliver services and programs to the community. So kind of very different types of funding and programs, right? But all about delivering services to residents. As Chair Bankston mentioned, we fund those in a slightly different way. So our operating budget is largely from income tax revenues and from enterprise revenues on the public utility side, which Mr. Crawford will be talking about later. But as Chair Bankston mentioned, we set 25% or 25 cents of every dollar we set aside, we reserve, right, for funding the city's capital improvement budget. And that goes for debt service when we have to issue municipal bonds. As Mr. Crawford's going to talk about, we also use enterprise fund, which is actually Department of Public Utility ratepayer funds to fund some of these projects as well. All right. Thank you.
I think we're back on schedule.
I think we're back. I think we're back. So we've kind of just talked about this. Operating is staffing, supplies, and services. If we could move to next slide, please. Yes. Capital, again, this is physical infrastructure. The physical locations where city business occurs. Think big things like roads, sidewalks, rec facilities, infrastructure improvements, especially on the water sewer infrastructure side. We'll talk about it a little bit later. As both Chair Bankston and Councilmember Barosa de Padilla mentioned, we have two different capital ways of looking at things or projecting things, right? We have a capital improvement program, which is a 6-year forward-looking projection. It's for the years 2024 through 2029. This is a way that we always try to make sure that we can fund and reserve for future infrastructure capital needs of the city. So it's very much a forward-looking process. The capital improvement budget, which is really the focus of this evening's hearing, is the first year of the capital improvement program. It talks about specific capital improvement needs that the city is going to have over the next fiscal year. And then again, as Chair Bankston mentioned, we reserve 25% of every dollar that comes in income tax to help pay for these projects, as well as enterprise fund revenues on the water, sewer, and electricity side. So how does this all come together? Finance plays a central role in compiling the capital budget. So one of the first things that we try to do is partner with our city auditor to make sure that we can set the total capacity, right? We never want to have a situation where the city can't pay for its infrastructure needs, right? So we set capacity, meaning the total size of the budget that we think is a fiscally responsible size for the entire budget. We compile all the requests from outside agencies, from internal departments, and we present those to Mayor Ginther, who reviews those and makes final decisions with his team. We present a capital improvement budget to our council for their consideration, and then at some point we'll have adoption post the public hearings like we're here tonight. And then, as Chair Bankston mentioned, we have to pay for all this, and a municipal bond sale is how that process sort of wraps up. And that would typically occur sometime in the fall or spring of next year. We're very happy to say that this year's capital budget has been informed through a lens of equity, specifically Mayor Ginther's Opportunity Rising initiative, and you'll see a link there on the screen where you can learn more about it. But essentially, it's the city's equity initiative. It's 21 aspirations, but they're all centered around 3 different foundational guiding principles: safe and resilient communities, health and well-being of residents, and economic stability. And so each department has framed their 2024 capital improvement budget requests around those guiding principles. This slide is a 10-year snapshot of the city's capital budget history, and I think the main takeaway is, and something we're all very proud of, is, in 2015, the city's capital budget was a little less than $1 billion, which is still substantial. This year, it's almost $2 billion. So in 10 years, the city's capital budget has almost doubled, which is really a testament to the strength of our local economy and most importantly to the resiliency and strength of residents, that we have that type of strength. This pie chart you see before you is a breakdown of how this year's capital budget would be funded. So it's almost $2 billion. The red section of the pie is the portion that would be funded through enterprise fund revenues. These would be the ratepayer related funds that I mentioned earlier. It's our Department of Public Utilities, and it's, again, it's ratepayer proceeds that come in through that department. The blue section is the 25% set aside that Chair Bankston mentioned. It's those 25 cents that we reserve from every dollar of income tax. So about 44% SIT supported, 53% enterprise supported. So in addition to finance being sort of central in compiling and putting together a unified capital budget for council's consideration, we're also a user department, meaning we actually utilize some of the capital budget that's approved each year. The management side of our title deals with, we have a facilities management team and a construction management team and a real estate management team, and they are charged with overseeing the infrastructure needs of the city. Over 100 different city buildings, including police substations and fire stations, a lot of different city infrastructure needs. And so this is basically a quick summary of the finance department portion of the 2024 capital budget. And as you can see, this is all really central infrastructure type improvement needs for the city. It takes a lot of dollars to maintain over 100 different facilities. So you'll see things like facility renovations, roof renovations, security enhancements, safety, facility upgrades. The one thing I will point out, specifically, is this budget would include $125 million in new funding for a new municipal court building, which would be located downtown. And then this final side is just contact information. Kathy Owens is our director. Kyle Severhard, who's actually with us tonight, and she heads up our capital team, and her and Diana Veason have really done all the heavy lifting to put this capital budget together and done tremendous work. We're also happy to say that if you visit that link, columbus.gov/capital, all the details of this year's capital budget can be found there, down to the project level, and we actually have an interactive dashboard that our team put together, Kyle and Diana, in partnership with our Department of Technology. So it is a new innovation this year. We're really excited for all of you to check it out and let us know what you think, and let us know what improvements you think that we could make. And with that, Chair Bankston, Councilmember Rosa DiPadilla, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director. And again, just want to underscore that www.columbus.gov / or backslash, I don't know, /capital. And again, you'll be able to go through this current budget as well as the CIP so that you have more time to dive into it. And so we will begin, again, continue to take comments from folks based off of that. So I encourage residents to go to that link. Any questions from you, council member?
No, not this time. One thing I would say is that I just encourage folks to follow, Chair Bankston and I think we've been the constant through these. I know Chair Remy was also at the last two. We've tried to ask questions, so I would encourage folks, if they want to look back at either the virtual or last night's meeting for some of the questions. I know that tonight we have a healthier list of residents that have signed up, and so we don't want to cheat folks out of the questions that we ask, but don't want to be redundant in some of those questions. So to move along, to ensure that we get to audience questions, we're probably going to move through some of these. That's not a lack of interest of us. That's just because that does live somewhere and folks can go back and look at that. But we want to ensure that we hear from all of you. So
thank you. Thank you for that clarification. So with that, I'm going to move into public service. We have Steve Wenzel, our Deputy Director of Public Service. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Good evening, Chair Bankston, Councilmember Rosa DiPadilla, members of the community. My name is Steve Wenzel. I'm the Deputy Director for Department of Public Service. Thank you for this opportunity to briefly speak about the Department of Public Service's 2024 capital improvements budget and to detail some of the projects that are proposed. The Department of Public Service's proposed 2024 capital improvements budget totals $248.6 million this year. That's made up of $77.9 million in new funding and $170.7 million in carryover funding that will invest in roadways, sidewalks, bikeways, bridges, and other projects that will improve the quality of life in our neighborhoods. Some of the guiding principles we use when we're developing our capital improvements budget stems from just our public service mission statement to deliver unparalleled public service in Columbus to enhance equitable mobility, safety, and quality of life. Public service focuses on capital projects to create equitable mobility access to jobs, schools, healthcare, and other services. The Public Service Department is leading the planning, design, and construction of many city infrastructure projects, supporting Vision Zero principles to slow speeds and create safe conditions for pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, and transit users. As in most years, the centerpiece of Public Service's proposed capital budget is $53.5 million in new funding and carryover funding for the city's resurfacing program. The Department of Public Service maintains approximately 5,700 lane miles citywide. The resurfacing program mills the existing pavement and replaces it with new asphalt, performs partial and full depth pavement repairs, ADA ramp upgrades, curb repair, and pavement markings. This year, there will be 4 major resurfacing projects totaling $42 million. With these projects, the department plans to resurface over 275 streets and construct over 1,188 curb ramps across the city. The department also plans to spend another $1.6 million on brick and concrete rehab of some of our streets throughout the city. Some of the streets are a sample of the streets that will be resurfaced as a part of these projects. Here on the south side is Kelton Avenue from Ennis Avenue to Smith Road, Beck Street from Parsons Avenue to 18th, Ennis Avenue from Lockbourne Avenue to Fairwood Avenue, and Clarefield Avenue from Groveport Road to Fairwood Avenue. Included in this year's capital budget is new funding in the amount of $3.5 million and another $5 million in carryover funding for our bridge rehab program. This type of work typically performed on our bridges includes patching of concrete surfaces, micro surfacing, painting, replacing of expansion joints, and crack sealing. Also included in the 2024 capital improvements budget proposal is $18 million associated with Link Us initiative. That's represented by $15 million in carryover funding and another $3 million in new funding. Link Us is Central Ohio's comprehensive mobility initiative aimed at addressing growth, affordability, opportunity gaps within our community by making significant investments in transit, sidewalks, bikeways, trails, and roadway improvements. One of the key projects within the Link Us initiative is the Northwest Bus Rapid Transit Corridor, which has been allocated $4 million in the 2024 capital improvements budget, and an additional $3 million in new funding has been requested for the corridor's design completion. The remaining $11 million of the allocated budget will contribute to advancing multiple projects that improve transit, pedestrian access along the Northwest Corridor. Additionally, these funds will facilitate ongoing design efforts for the West Broad Street and East Main Street BRT corridors. Also included in this proposed capital improvements budget are other important investments in our community. The 2024 budget proposal includes $1.8 million in new funding for the intersection improvements Georgesville at Hall Road project, which is leveraging another $1 million in grant funding from the Ohio Department of Transportation. This project includes improvements to the traffic signal at Georgesville and Hall Road, along with additions of right turn lanes in the southbound and eastbound directions, and a shared use path along the south side of Hall Road from Georgesville to Dura Road. Another project included in the 2024 budget proposal is right-of-way acquisition costs associated with the Livingston Avenue, 18th Street to Nelson Road project at $2.2 million. This project consists of design improvements to the Livingston Avenue corridor from 18th Street to Nelson Road. A safety study was initiated by the city that included public engagement with a steering committee made up of community members. The resulting recommendation is to perform lane reallocation to reduce travel lanes, improving safety, lowering vehicle speeds, and providing safe bike and pedestrian facilities. This project was awarded a Safe Streets for All grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation for up to $12 million to support the city's goal with Vision Zero Columbus. This is focused on ending crash-related fatalities and serious injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. This budget proposal includes $8.5 million, which is represented by $3.1 million in carryover funding and another $5.4 million in new funding for the city's Vision Zero initiative. The Vision Zero Columbus program is focused on ending crash-related fatalities and serious injuries on our streets while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. The Vision Zero Columbus Action Plan 2023 to 2028 outlines specific actions and strategies focused on eliminating traffic fatalities and serious injuries in our city. This $8.5 million commitment continues the implementation of this action plan. A sample of Vision Zero projects included in this budget is the Crosswalk Enhancement Project, which is $1.1 million for construction. This project includes upgrading signage and striping, as well as possible installation of pedestrian islands and pedestrian crossing beacons and curb extensions at 14 different locations. Some of the 14 locations here on the south side include Thurman Avenue at South Champion Avenue, Parsons Avenue and East Moeller Street, South High at West Hinman Avenue, and Livingston Avenue and Kennedy Drive. This 2024 capital budget proposal includes $31.4 million in new and carryover funding for mobility safety improvements, which includes sidewalks, bikeways, and shared use paths. A sample of projects is the Operation Safe Walks Refugee Road from New Bixby to Blue Moon project. It's included at $5.1 million for construction. This project consists of constructing sidewalks along the north side of Refugee Road from New Bixby to Blue Moon, and on the south side of Refugee Road from New Bixby to the existing sidewalk just west of Glenbrier Street. Another sidewalk project that is budgeted in this capital budget is $1 million for design for the Marion Franklin Sidewalk Project. This project involves installation of sidewalk on Mound View Avenue, Augmont Avenue, and Clairfield Avenue from Groveport Road to Fairwood Avenue. The 2024 capital improvements budget also includes $8.8 million for refuse collection vehicles and containers to replace and update the division's fleet that service over 346,000 households every week. Some of this equipment will be dedicated to support the Clean Neighborhoods Initiative to address the persistent problem of illegal dumping in our neighborhoods. Lastly, looking ahead at some of our priorities in the capital improvements program, as Deputy Director Long and Councilmember Bankston mentioned, this is our 5-year plan from 2025 to 2029. We're going to continue investment in our Vision Zero initiative, roughly $5.3 million per year, or $26.5 million over the 5-year period. We're going to allocate $20 million each year in funded resurfacing dollars, amounting to $100 million over the next 5 years. Mobility funding will be $6 million per year, or roughly $30 million over the 5-year span, and bridge rehab program will be $3.4 million per year, or roughly $17 million over that 5-year period. Again, I'd like to thank council and the community for letting me present the Public Service proposed 2024 capital improvements budget. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director, for that. And I just want to point out one thing, and I know we briefly went over it in the finance, but you heard the Deputy Director talk about carryover funding. So what is proposed to us when we talk about the 2024 capital budget, it both includes new money that the council is authorizing the administration and auditor to go out and borrow, but also reauthorizing money that was from the 2023 or other previous capital budgets to be spent. In many cases, a lot of the projects we have design phases, construction phases, many phases, and so sometimes those don't happen in the same exact year. So when you hear that word carryover funding versus new funding, I just want to be clear with folks understand when we talk about those two different distinctions. So when we talk about that $1.99 billion, a good chunk of it is money that has already been authorized, that was through a previous bond sale, and then part of it is new money that we're giving the auditor authority to go out and issue new debt. With that, I don't have any questions. I know, Madam Chair, you're Chair of Public Service. I want to kick it over to you to see if you have any questions that you wanted to ask.
Sure. So I'm going to ask the same questions I've asked in every other venue. If we could maybe give high-level answers, just a little bit shorter for the purposes of just folks having some sort of perspective into how we make decisions around with street resurfacing in particular. So with street resurfacing, usually if folks listen into council meetings, I'm sure you all do on Monday evenings because they're riveting, but we usually do it's a 3-phase process. There'll be a number of streets that we usually go through that is on the website so folks can see that. But can you just tell us what goes into how we decide when streets are going to be resurfaced, where they're going to be, and what are just some of what goes into that decision making?
Okay, thank you, council member. So we'll look at pavement condition. That is what we call a PCN number. So it's assigned to each street throughout the whole city. We work with a consultant that actually goes out and evaluates the streets and does core samples, things of that nature, and we assign a number to it. It's either, a low number is a real bad street and a higher number is a real good street. So we'll look at that. We look at how much traffic the street has. Is it a high traffic street like an arterial street rehab, or is it a residential street? That factors into it. We get input from our street maintenance staff. These are the men and women that are out in the streets filling potholes and out there every day and seeing what's going on with our streets and what might be deteriorating faster than what we want it to. And we also take 311 input. So actually call 311, we log that, we track it, we put it on a list, we go out and send our investigators out to look at the road. So we do make decisions based on the 311 calls. And we try to get our streets resurfaced every 15 to 25 years, depending on if it's an arterial street rehab or if it's a residential street. So we look at when it was last resurfaced and say, okay, is it still in good shape since we just resurfaced it last 5 years? And we try to distribute the resurfacing packages. You hear us talk about package 1, package 2, package 3. We'll do package 1 that might be the east and the north quadrant of the city because we get better pricing from our contractors that way because they're not moving their crews all around the city all the time. So we look at that, and we look at other projects. We don't want to resurface a street when we know our colleagues from Public Utilities is coming through to put a water line in the next year. So we don't want them tearing up the street right after we resurfaced it. So that's some of the things we look at. And of course, funding factors into it too. We pretty much get funded $20 million every year, plus additional money from that rolls over from last year. So we kind of bundle all that together and try to get as much done as we can.
And I think it's also just important that folks, I know that 311 is not perfection, but it is a point of where we collect data from. So even if your street, the whole street may not need to be resurfaced, if there's particular parts of the street that are more worn down, that's something that folks can put on our radar so that then we can begin to address that, especially as we look at like our pothole season after the winter is usually when we focus on those things. The other big question that we get often is sidewalks. And so again, for perspective for folks, just can you talk about both, and I want to share this as perspective. This does not mean that all is not lost. We're about 50% sidewalked right now. There's additional strategies that we use. For example, if there's a new development that is going in, we ask that the developer put in a sidewalk. And part of that, and a lot of times we hear like, it's a sidewalk to nowhere. And it's a sidewalk because there's not a sidewalk there, with the hope that more development will come, or that we can fill in some of those areas or create an ADA ramp where there is not one, with, again, the hopes that we're going to backfill. It is one strategy to meeting that other 50% that we need to get sidewalk. But if you could just give us a perspective on what goes into selection, the cost, that kind of thing, just so folks also know and understand.
Yeah, thank you, council member. So cost-wise, if you look at the cost of sidewalk, we kind of estimate about $400 per linear foot. So when you put the math together and you look at what would a mile cost of sidewalk throughout the city, it's roughly $2.1 million that it would cost to do 1 mile of sidewalk. And as Councilmember mentioned, we have 50% of our sidewalks throughout the city. We don't have streets, or roads don't have sidewalks. And so we're talking roughly around 1,400 miles of sidewalks that are missing throughout the city. So when you kind of do that math, it's a lot of money. So we really got to try to prioritize and use these other options that we can use to try to get as many sidewalks done as possible, like the development dollars. Another initiative that's real big that we talked about is Link Us. That's going to be an opportunity for us to build that infrastructure to get to the bus stations for the rapid transit. So a lot of that is going to be sidewalks and bikeways, and leveraging those dollars from the levy to build it. So, and we're hoping to build 500 miles of sidewalks and bikeways between now and 2050, I believe it is. So we're going to leverage that. We try to leverage grant funding that we have through the state, through our STRS program, which is Safe Routes to Schools program. So we apply for grants through the Ohio Department of Transportation as another mechanism to fill in those gaps leading to high schools and elementary schools. So we bundle all that together to try to get as many sidewalks as we can get done. Again, we look at 311, we look at vehicular traffic, how much traffic is on that road. We look at focused neighborhoods, some of our older neighborhoods, some of our opportunity neighborhoods might be better connections for us to get to different places. Bus routes, where the sidewalks lead to. They might lead to a bus route. We look at district-wide school travel plans, MORPC crash data, destinations of interest, things like that. We look at all these different factors when we're trying to determine what sidewalks go in.
And then I just want to, you had mentioned Link Us and that we're putting aside money for Link Us. So Link Us is an initiative. It will be on the ballot in November. I want to just, we've talked a lot about some of the infrastructure dollars that will come in because of Link Us. I just want to reiterate that while we are making these investments, also it gives us an incredible opportunity to pull down those federal dollars. And for almost every project, every roadway project that we do, it takes both our local funding, our state funding, and federal funding, even when we're doing things like Livingston Avenue or other roadway projects. Because of the cost of it, we need to pull from these different resources. So I just want to, again, just give folks perspective on that. That does not mean, that is not an excuse, or that does not mean all is lost. It's just understanding like it's a long game proposition when we talk about some of the things that we are talking about today. So especially for our area commissioners, as we've had conversations, really understanding those high priority projects so that then we can make some good decisions about where we put some of those resources. And when we start the process, knowing that some of them take up to 8 and 10 years from design to completion, from study, design, completion. So thank you for sharing that perspective. I also want to mention, as we talk about Link Us, just that last plug is that when folks go to the ballot, it's not going to say Link Us on anyone's ballot. It's going to be an initiative for CODA that not only will bring down those infrastructure dollars, but also will add to CODA service, improving CODA service by almost 50%. So thank you for that. That's all the questions that I have, Chair.
Thank you for that clarity, Madam Chair of Public Service, because I think oftentimes we want those sidewalks, we want those things just to happen. And I recall when I was working in the administration, I'm like, why does it take so long to do this? But you forget that there's things like utilities and other things in the right of way, and we got to think about those types of things and just the cost of it as well. And so thank you for that clarity. As well as with Link Us, I do believe that it is about transportation, but it is also about the growth of our city. We can't put 1 million more cars on the street. We have to figure out how do we move folks around our city, one, in an equitable way, but also in a dignified way. If they decide to take public transportation, they should be able to get to their destination in a dignified way, the same way that anyone in a car would be. But also there's a timeline. We're going to voters for Link Us because it is going to leverage billions of dollars in federal dollars. That the federal government has said to us that you have to prove and show that you're going to bring some skin to the table for us to leverage even more dollars. And so looking forward to going to voters in November around that issue. Next, we have our Recreation and Parks Department, and we have with us Mr. Craig Murphy. Craig, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Bankston and Councilmember Barroso de Padilla, and everyone engaged and interested in learning more about the city's capital budget. My name is Craig Murphy. I work with Recreation and Parks. It's my honor to present, our proposed capital budget this year. Recreation and Parks proposes $55,709,000 in new funding in 2024, which is captured within $86,222,741 in ongoing projects from previous year's carryover. Last year, Recreation and Parks received its first ever national accreditation. There are 12,000 Recreation and Parks agencies across the country, and there are only 200 that have this accreditation. So it means we follow the national best practices relative to how we operate our agency, and that also includes how we perform our capital program. So for example, in 2023, we had 97 meetings and engagements with the community relative to the capital program. That included meetings with civic associations, area commissions, block watches, and other resident groups. This type of engagement that will help inform our capital priorities. Also in 2023, we received and reviewed, analyzed, and logged over 140 requests via email, 311, or website inquiries relating to our capital program. We prioritize taking care of the things that we have. So we are renovating and improving assets while growing with discipline and having an understanding of equity during our planning process. We know that more communities want pools. We know more communities want community centers and athletic complexes and sports courts and playgrounds. And we at Recreation Parks, we see that too, and we hear you. We have to balance that growth with timely renovations of existing properties and selective consolidation of facilities and programs whenever possible. While we may not have a community center in all corners of Columbus, we have started the Center Without Walls program that runs after-school programs and summer camps at partner locations such as Eakin Elementary, Wedgwood Middle School, Highland Elementary School, and Liberty Elementary. And Liberty Elementary on the southeast side is a little bit different because we're looking to expand that from just after-school program and summer camps to more even larger family-oriented and larger programs. We are starting a new master plan, and we're calling it Playbook Columbus. And in part, we plan to use we hope to use it to help identify gaps in things like our service areas and our level of service. On the south side of Columbus, Recreation and Parks has plans to both improve existing properties while adding some new parks and amenities. This is a very limited snapshot of our of things that we plan to do in 2024 using this proposed budget. Developing our greenways and trails was a primary request out of our department's prior 10-year master plan. To respond, Recreation and Parks has been actively developing the Big Walnut Greenway Trail. In 2024, we will initiate the detailed design of a 2.5-mile stretch of the Big Walnut Greenway between Winchester Pike and Nafsker Park. This will be a detailed design contract for $1.8 million. On the west side of Columbus, Hans Park will utilize $1.3 million of 2024 capital funding for the redevelopment and refresh of that park space. Design work is currently underway for both Barrick Community Center and Schiller Community Center to install air conditioning. We are estimating the addition of air conditioning at each of these sites to be about $2 million per site. McCoy Park will utilize $4.2 million to support phase 1 of redevelopment of that green space that will result in both a community park with a walking loop trail, ADA, playground, splash pad, and open shelter. The site will also be home to Recreation and Parks Therapeutic Recreation Program, where we will offer leagues for blind soccer and wheelchair basketball and buddy baseball and other therapeutic programming. Deschler Park will utilize an estimated $200,000 to support a new open shelter. There are more greenway improvements planned and budgeted for with the preliminary design of the Big Walnut Greenway. This is $692,000 for a 3.5-mile stretch between Nafsker Park and Main Street. Salmon Sports Park will have targeted improvements on a ball diamond with the addition of lighting and renovations to the entry drive and parking lot with a construction estimate of about $400,000. We rely on and we plan in multi-year increments. So regarding the 5-year capital improvement program, Recreation and Parks would propose and implement far more than what I'm about to share, but for the sake of providing a snapshot of what's ahead of the south side of Columbus, Recreation and Parks will be requesting the following projects. Recreation Parks has nearly completed its design on the replacement of the Marion Franklin Pool. We will be requesting $12 million for construction in 2025. It's worth noting that when we replace pools, we are also adding capacity to these pools with more features and ways for people to enjoy the water. McCoy Park, as I mentioned earlier, this time will utilize $10 million towards phase 2 of the new community park space in the therapeutic recreation facilities and outdoor spray park. Mason Run Park near Eastland will utilize approximately $5.5 million as the site is developed into a neighborhood park. Greenbrier Park in the far east will become a new neighborhood park utilizing approximately $2 million for design and construction of that park. Willow Creek Park is an existing park that will be redeveloped utilizing $2.75 million for design and construction. And in Westland, Freedom Park will utilize approximately $1.5 million for park updates and new amenities, and a new community park near Hall and Galloway will begin its master planning phase, where we will begin by utilizing $800,000 for a reforestation project in this low canopy area. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. The overview map, which is represented here represents some of the projects discussed this evening, but also there's about 114 projects that are not on this map that represent the full breadth of the 2024 budget for Recreation and Parks. Next slide, please. Recreation and Parks utilizes an allocation model, so for expending its capital funds. So as mentioned earlier, we prioritize the management of our existing assets, and it is why we reserve nearly half of our funding for the renovation of existing facilities and parks. However, we're reminded daily about our need to grow, which is why we reserve about 7% of our allocation for the acquisition of future parkland and 25% for new development. Much of the funds used for acquisition are used as match dollars for grants from the state agencies and other funders. This has allowed us to acquire over 600 acres of future parkland in the past 5 years. So I'll mention again, Recreation and Parks is launching its 10-year master plan process. And we're calling it, like I said, Playbook Columbus. This is extremely important to us and to the community. This shapes the direction of our agency and the things we'll do in the next 10 years. So a survey will be available. A website will be launched later this month. And this will be roughly a year-long process. So we are going to be out there. You'll be hearing more about this in the coming months. Also thrilled to announce the scheduled opening of the Fran Ryan Center in January of 2025. This is located off of East Broad Street. The project was funded with previous year's capital funding and will serve as a home of a hybrid of arts and wellness programming for older adults. This concludes a Recreation and Parks presentation. And thank you, Chair Bankston, for creating this opportunity to share these exciting proposed projects and plans with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Any questions from you, Councilmember?
The only one question that I have, again, if we could kind of just give a quick overview, especially as I think about where we sit today, is we have some very innovative projects and ways that we're thinking about how do we expand some of the services. And you talked about Recreation Without Walls, I think, is that what we call it? And one of the new pools that we're opening in conjunction with Columbus City Schools. We have some partnerships with the library and having facilities that are proximate to libraries, which, as I said yesterday, is like the best for kids in the summer. To be by a rec center and a library, you get the best of both worlds. So what does it look like, especially when we expand outside of the core of the city, when we're thinking the far corners of the city? How are we looking at being nimble and being innovative in ensuring that we are providing services for those folks who, may be on the far east, far south, far west, that it's, it's a little different the further out you go, right? And so how are we bringing communities together and ensuring that we have services for our families that are there as well?
Thank you, Councilmember, for the question. In 2023, we adopted an aquatics plan, which really laid out a 20-year plan for our agency about how we can grow our aquatics. If you look at a map, we have eight pools, outdoor pools, and we have one indoor facility, and they largely exist in the core city. And it looks like in about, 19-something, 75 or something, we stopped growing out our aquatics. And it was probably a function of a lot of private pools existed in these other areas in this 1950 boundary. So, but as those pools have gone away functionally and become apartment complexes, it's left us with having three primary areas that are aquatics gaps. That's southwest and southeast and on the north. And those are areas where we are looking at how can we grow our aquatics, both splash pads, which are great for cooling people off, but it's not teaching kids to swim. It's not teaching people to swim. We know that how important from an equity perspective it is to teach people to swim. It's a life skill, it's a vital skill. And so we are looking, one of the things that we heard through our process with the aquatic study was look to partner, and find the partners, and one of those partners should be the Columbus City Schools. They have kids, they have land, they have facilities. Why are you not working together? And we heard that, and so that's one of our first steps. So out of the aquatic, and you've heard me say it at least 3 times tonight, that it's really important for us to grow. We have to take care of the things that we have. And it's kind of easy to grow because it's exciting, it's really thrilling, but it's also difficult to have the discipline to take care of the things that you have. So out of the aquatics study, and our recommendation is that let's continue renovating the pools that we have. So last year we did Glenwood, and we did Windsor Pool. And then we paid for design for the next 2 pools, which is Tuttle and Marion Franklin. And once those Tuttle and Marion Franklin are complete, then all of our pools have been renovated. And that puts us in a position to grow. So our first step in growing is to create an indoor aquatics facility. And we're looking at partnering with the schools on a site to do that. And one of the reasons we're starting with an indoor facility is that our existing one is about 60 years old, it's pretty aged, and B, it creates year-round swimming opportunities, and C, we have this opportunity to then integrate learning to swim as part of the school's curriculum. And so you can begin to imagine like kids going there and learning to swim as part of their physical education classes or something of that nature. So it's a kind of a long, it's been a long journey, but we're making progress and we're being sort of very incremental with it. But these are very large ticket numbers too for investment. And we expect that our master plan will continue to help us identify areas of both access, where we want, and growth, and in terms of prioritizing new facilities in the future for our agency.
And I just want to shout out, I know Director Bernita Reese is here. I'm sorry, Chair. I was stealing his thunder, but I said this, we talked about this yesterday, but I think that I'm really excited about the trajectory of where we're going with recreation and parks, how we are thinking outside of the box with the resources that we have. Who are those key partners, like our school system, libraries, et cetera, where we can partner together to bring assets and bring more amenities to our community and to our kids. I would also say highly encourage folks to be part of that playbook, be part of that vision plan, and give perspective to that plan. I was sharing that my neighborhood pool, I went to Barnett Recreation Center and Livermore Pool, which unfortunately was one of the pools that we closed, but it was literally right up the street from my house. It was like a 10-minute walk, which is what I believe most recreation, that's what we aim for. A 5-minute bike ride on my 10-speed, and it's where we spent all summer long. And it was like $1 to get in, or it might have even been free back then. I'm really dating myself, but that's the kind of thing that I certainly want for my kids. This is a place where they learn to swim. So I'm excited about our trajectory, but again, just encourage folks to be part of that plan, because we say it all the time, no one knows your neighborhood like you do. No one knows both the assets and the deficits and the things that we're missing and the things that we want and need. And I think that as the city continues to grow, we have really great assets in our core, but obviously our core is growing. And so ensuring that we have all those assets everywhere and that we're being creative about how we get those in the hands of our residents is going to be key. So thank you, and thank you, Director Reese. Chair.
It's your district, so I'll let you steal my
Thank you.
thunder, it's fine. No, but I do just want to emphasize this, because I think recreation and parks is something that a lot of times we talk about, and it gets overlooked because it doesn't have, in some cases, many of the funding that's necessary. Building a rec center is easy. Staffing a rec center and making sure that it has the operational support is the hard part. And so that is really what we're balancing. And what I will say, and I continue to say this, and this is why I praise Director Reese, one, she is recognized around the nation for recreation and parks and what she has done. But when we talk about equity, equality means that everybody has a rec center. And so we could continue to build a rec center everywhere and they could all have one. And folks at Barrick will continue to sweat and heat. Folks at Northeast will continue to not have air conditioning, and other buildings will continue to crumble. Equity means that, yes, we understand that we're growing, but we have to take care of the older neighborhoods in addition to taking care of our residents that are growing outwardly. And so I will say that I won't apologize, and I'm excited when I look down the street, just down Parsons Avenue, and look at Scioto and what has been built there, something that is amazing for this community, that this community deserves. We just left Linden Park, Linden Recreation Center just yesterday. Linden Recreation Center was built, it was a shelter house that the city converted into a recreation center in the 1950s. And now it is 3 times the size, and it has programming like a recording studio, because not every black boy and every black girl plays basketball. It has an indoor track to make sure that our kids are diversified. It has an outdoor splash pad to make sure they stay cool. Maybe not a full pool, but those are the types of things that when we talk about equity, we have to invest back in our core neighborhoods that have seen so much disinvestment, as well as make sure that we are preparing for that growth and making sure that we get things in parts of our city that we know that need it. Far West Side, I talk to them every single day, and they absolutely desperately need a rec center, and we're going to make sure that we do it in a way that's sustainable for them, as well as the far south side and so many other sides of our city, northeast side of Columbus that's growing. And so I don't want to skirt past recreation and parks, because this is always a contentious issue, but it is one of the hardest amenities for us as a city to keep up with our size. We are not a small city. We're not one of our suburban partners who have confined boundaries. We're 225 square miles, and we continue to grow, and we continue to shoulder the burden of the growth of this region. So again, I want to thank Director Reese, thank the folks at Recreation and Parks for that. Thank you for the update on the pool plan as well, because I know we don't have enough pools. So that's been a consistent question that I have asked. With that, we will move into public safety. We got 3 more. Y'all still with me? Y'all good? Y'all can answer back to me now. Give me some energy, okay? All right, I see the rev in here. All right. So we have public safety next, and my good friend Dan Jangardella is our deputy director there. So Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Bankston, Councilmember Barossa de Padilla, members of the community. On behalf of Safety Director Kate Bouchard, I want to thank you for allowing me to discuss information regarding the public safety 2024 capital budget. Public safety budget proposes $66.4 million in new funding and $54.5 in carryover funds for a total of just under $121 million. The department is focused on the mayor's priorities of protecting Columbus neighborhoods by designing and constructing new police and fire facilities, procuring new fire apparatus, and various improvements to other public safety facilities. These investments support safe and efficient facilities and vehicles for public safety employees who provide essential services, as well as protect the lives and property of Columbus residents. These investments also promote safe and resilient communities as part of the mayor's Opportunity Rising initiative. With respect to projects on the south side of Columbus, carryover funding of $15.3 million is included to resurface the vehicle storage area at the city impound lot. Work on this project will begin this summer. That surface was originally a gravel lot, most of it, and now we are converting that to a hard surface lot. There's also $800,000 in capital funds included to relocate and design the storage and training areas for the city's fire bomb units. They have facilities presently on public utilities property, and we're looking to relocate them and hopefully in the near future. There's also approximately $15.1 in carryover funds to construct a new police substation at the Hilltop on Sullivan Avenue. The city acquired land in 2022 for this substation. Design is presently underway. We're hoping the construction will begin yet this year. There is also $2.5 million proposed in new funding to renovate the HVAC right here at the Fire Training Academy on Parsons Avenue. The current system here, although it feels pretty good right now, is original to this building. And for those of you who may have lived in this part of the community remember that this was the old Worley High School, and that equipment is original to the building. So this will be an initial investment of 2.5, and then we'll have a subsequent investment, hopefully later this year or next, to also continue to upgrade that system. I think in total it's going to cost us about $6 million. Finally, there is $700,000 in carryover funds to upgrade the women's restroom and locker facilities at Fire Station 22, just up the road here, also on Parsons Avenue. Many of our older stations, and we have several that are upwards of 70 years old, at a time when we only had men in our fire stations. And so we are going back and retrofitting several of them and making it more convenient for our women firefighters that weren't contemplated in those days. This is one of several that we are modernizing in that regard. The capital budget also includes a number of items that are citywide in their basis. For instance, we have $10 million in fire apparatus, which consists of ladders, engines, heavy rescue vehicles, EMS response vehicles. These vehicles could be assigned to any of our fire stations across the city based upon need. We are a little bit fortunate in that we've had a fairly robust investment this last year and this year in equipment. The prices for that apparatus has increased tremendously. It's probably not a surprise to anyone in here. With inflation coming out of the COVID economy and supply chain issues, so we're very grateful that finance, the mayor, and council have increased those amounts for us. Overall, the fleet is in relatively good shape, although, again, with the expansion of some fire stations, we added Fire Station 35 2 years ago, and then proposing also in the northeast part of the city, Fire Station 36, we will need that apparatus. Other investments, again, besides fire apparatus, the budget includes $6.25 million in combination of funds and carryover and new funds to do general renovations and improvements at our fire stations and police substations. We have 34 fire stations throughout the city and nearly 20 precinct facilities for police, as well as 3 academy buildings, and they need general improvements, things like pavement restorations, generator replacements, again, HVAC replacements, window replacements, et cetera. So these funds would be used for that type of activity. Not on the screen there, but last evening we talked about our public safety campus, which is going to be constructed at the Piedmont Carolyn Avenue facility. I bring that up again because it really is a citywide asset for public safety. We will have at that location a new 911 center, an emergency operations center, as well as a real-time crime center and a crime gun intelligence center, which will allow police to be more efficient in solving crime. It will bring synergies together with other public safety agencies in Central Ohio, and it will also allow us to be more predictable as to where crime may occur in the city. So we're very excited about those investments. And then, of course, the 911 center, which serves the entire community, obviously is a very critical piece of infrastructure for us. There is $50 million proposed in the capital budget for that investment. Finally, with respect to citywide projects, there is $4 million in carryover funds that we will use to upgrade some telecommunications equipment, fire dispatching equipment, and replace public safety radios. With respect to the capital plan that's been alluded to, investments in the future, typically, again, we look to get at least $6 million for apparatus and then some general renovations money for about $3.5 million. With respect to future fire stations or police substations, these priorities are typically determined over the next 12 to 24 months. And while we anticipate the funds will be available, the exact amounts for those will be determined later on in conjunction and working with our partners in finance and management. That concludes my presentation. I want to thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Director, and we'll make sure that we entertain those. As we both said, we've been at this 2 hearings now, so as you see, the team is also with us, so they answer a lot of our questions now. They put it into the presentation, so thank you for that. Next, we will move to the Department of Development to present their budget, and we have with us Deputy Director Bill Webster. Bill?
Thank you, Chair Bankston. Councilmember Rosa De Padilla.
There we go. Thank you.
Members of the community, on behalf of Director Mike Stevens and the Department of Development, I appreciate the opportunity to present our 2024 capital improvement budget. Department of Development is proposing $103 million in new funding for 2024 and approximately $74 million in carryover funding, totaling $177 million for this up-and-coming budget. Our largest priority is housing. 60% of our budget is dedicated to affordable housing. Our guiding principles are very clear. We use these principles to determine all aspects of our project and our investments. They conclude build, invest, preserve, and include, in which we want to build housing of all types, rental, single family, etc. Invest, preserve, as well as include everybody who needs affordable housing. Looking at the south side, we are looking to invest approximately $50 million in affordable housing. This includes 47.2 in rental housing, permanent supportive housing, as well as single-family housing. $2 million in housing preservation, which helps us to preserve our existing housing stock. It is important that we keep our existing housing stock safe and of a quality that people can live in, as well as $800,000 for critical home repair. On the south side, we're continuing our relationship and investment with Rickenbacker Airport. We are putting $4 million in right-of-way improvements to help increase the capacity in the Rickenbacker area. This also will help to open up the 300 acres in the logistics park and build up to $4.4 million in industrial property. We're investing $5 million in nonprofit partnerships. This includes Mary Haven. Our nonprofit partners really help us to expand our outreach into the community. Our capital budget is designed to help our nonprofit partners make facility improvements in order to serve the various clientele that they're serving. And then lastly, emergency shelter repair. Every year we provide money to the shelter system for repairs, upgrades, so we can continue to provide facilities for those that need them when they need them. Looking out further, again, affordable housing is 60% of our current budget. It's going to continue to be our focus going forward. Approximately $150 million is what we're looking to invest over the next 5 years. Strategic acquisitions, we want to begin acquiring property to help support our affordable housing program. We want to invest $10 million trying to buy properties that ultimately help to facilitate community development and encourage the kind of development that we want to see. In addition, we're going to be working with the Franklin County Finance Authority by investing $5 million in what is a smaller scale public-private partnership program. We've begun to develop relationships with smaller developers, smaller property owners that we want to be able to inject money into their projects to help achieve. These are more in our central city corridors type redevelopment. Another $4 million to complete our commitment to the airport, and then again, we'll continue to invest in the shelter system. Looking at 2023, these are some examples of projects that have been completed. The city's invested $50 million to date. We've generated $220 million in private investment and approximately 1,200 additional new affordable units. Councilmember Bankston, or Chair Bankston, I apologize, because we're Rosa De Padilla. I thank you for the opportunity to present the budget. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director. And one point I won't ask you to clarify, and I'll just say it, and you can stay at this slide here, is that we went to the voters, and the voters voted for the first time in our city's history back in 2016 and reauthorized that in 2019, 2020, one of those years, for affordable housing. And so that $250 million that the voters say that we want to go to affordable housing, this is our strategy. It's us leveraging it to get more affordable units. Many folks I hear all the time, like, why won't you just build a whole new apartment complex? If we did that with the cost of construction, we would not get half the amount of units that we got. And so as you can see here, leveraging dollars like low-income housing tax credits at the state level, leveraging private developers, saying to them, if you're going to build and you want an incentive from the city, you're going to put affordable housing into it. And when we say affordable, that is what folks can afford. When we're talking about 60 and 80% AMI, those are teachers. Those are folks, those are trash truck drivers who are driving our streets. These are working folks that also are struggling and being squeezed and have nowhere to live. And so I just want to reiterate that when we're talking about that affordable housing piece, we're leveraging your money to make sure that we get more affordability, not in one project, in one side of town, but affordability in every part of our city so that folks can be able to choose where they want to live. But also, if you work in the city of Columbus, you get to live in the city of Columbus. So I just wanted to lift that piece up. Last but not least, Mr. Tom Crawford is going to bring us home with public utilities, because, listen, this is the most exciting one. Now, Tom does this well, though, because when we talk about sewer and water, that's a tough one, right? And it also, it is the biggest piece of our budget. When you look at the budget, over $1 billion of it is public utilities. That is water, that's sewer, that's electricity. Those are the non-sexy things. But when you turn on that faucet and the water is clean, that is one of the biggest priorities that we must have as a city, and public utilities is doing it every single day. So, Tom, I will kick it over to you.
I think after that, I'll just ask if there are any questions.
Well, you got to go through the numbers.
Oh, numbers,
I don't know the
okay.
numbers off the back of my head, but you got to go through the numbers.
Good evening. Oh, that was such an unenthusiastic, non-existent response. Let's wake you up. Let's try this again, Reverend, my friend from South, the Whirly Wolverine, okay? So we're going to start again, and we're going to raise the volume. Good evening. Good evening. Still pathetic, but getting better. My name is Tom Crawford, and I am the Capital Fiscal Manager for the Department of Public Utilities. For the next few minutes, I get to talk with you about the department's capital improvement plan. But we're going to cover a couple other things first. I was born and raised in the far south end of Columbus, just about right behind South Drive-In Theater. Thank you. We got to experience the tornado that took out South Drive-In Theater. We got to experience the baseball-sized hell balls that turned cars into what looked like driving golf balls with all the dimples on them. That was back in the late 70s or early 80s on the hailstorm. I went to the old Parsons Avenue Elementary School, which has since been rebuilt. I went to Buckeye Junior High School and Marion Franklin High School. Thank you. So this is the part of town that always feels like home to me. So while I'm here, I have to ask, how many Red Devils are here tonight? A few came in later. Thank you so much. I'm also a 1760s reenactor. I teach tomahawk throwing. My friend from South, I'm willing to teach you how to catch them, okay? As you may have discovered already, because of that, I like to have some interaction with the audience. Interaction, I'm going to define it for you for tonight. That means I will occasionally ask some questions and you will answer them. So buckle up, here we go.
Tom, where have you been? Everybody's we're taking you on the road.
I was at the virtual one, but that's no fun, there's no audience.
No fun, it's true.
So
It's
people
true.
typically have to ask me, when they hear my job title, Capital Fiscal Manager, what does a Capital Fiscal Manager do? I ask myself that too. But for public utilities, it means my team puts together the capital improvement budget. We decide upon funding sources. We bid the projects, we contract the projects, and occasionally we will pay the invoices. So we'll start with the overall budget numbers. As this slide shows, there is $945 million in new funding planned for projects in 2024, with $205 million in carryover funding. Like we said earlier, think of carryover funding as the money that we have not contracted yet, but we're going to. Our total capital plan for 2024 to 2029 is $5.5 billion spent on over 500 projects. Now, this is an interaction opportunity, and you were given this answer twice earlier, so there's no excuse for missing this. But it's a chance to test your math abilities too. How many years does the 2024 to 2029 capital budget cover? 5. Yes, we're all doing South End regular math. You're taking 2029 minus 2024 and saying 5. Let me introduce you to city math. 2024, 2025, 2026, 7, 8, 9. Had to go to the second hand. Yes, thank you, council member.
That's East High School math.
That's East High School math, yes, yes. Yeah, they were good in the classroom and horrible on the athletic field. I'll be in the unemployment line tomorrow. Yes, that is 6 years that the capital budget covers, not 5 like everybody else thinks. But these figures don't mean anything unless you know what we do with the funding that we receive. So, audience, what services does Public Utilities provide? I hear crickets chirping. Speak up. Sewers, yes. What else? Water, yes. Go, Reverend, go. Sewers, water, well, we're going to cover those. So this slide shows the services Public Utilities provides. We treat and distribute 53 billion gallons of water a year to area residents. Now, I want to give you some perspective on this. I want you to picture Lake Erie in your mind. Does everybody have a picture of Lake Erie in their mind? That was that interactive part. This is where you say yes. Very good. Using our 53 billion gallons of water a year, how long do you think it would take to fill Lake Erie? 12 hours? That's close. 6.6 years. Okay. I'm going to have to go with that. The rest of you, you're tongue-tied. And distribute that water, we have to maintain 3,600 miles of water line. So if we laid all of that end to end, we could supply water to Santa Claus at the North Pole.
Nice.
It might come out as ice cubes, but we could get it to his house at the North Pole. We treat 68 billion gallons of wastewater a year. I am not going to put a picture in your mind of that. But I will say that our sanitary sewers, once again, put end to end, would stretch from Columbus to Alaska, or could stretch from Columbus to the equator, depending upon how you like your weather. We do stormwater management. Our stormwater sewers, put end to end, are not quite as long as the sanitary sewers, but they could still reach Alaska. We provide electricity and streetlights, enough electricity to power all of Marietta, Ohio. And we do sustainability. We take care of all of this infrastructure while protecting natural resources. And the most important natural resource we have is water. Our guiding principles are to provide these services in a quality, accessible manner, to maintain the infrastructure we have already built while looking to the future to ensure we can support expected population growth. We also have to meet regulatory requirements, and we have to balance these things with affordable rates and discount programs. I want you to think of Interstate 70 as the dividing line when we talk about projects between North Columbus and South Columbus. So as I start talking about South Columbus, I'm talking about south of Interstate 70. So we're going to catch my friends from the far west area on this too. The south side of Columbus in 2024 and 2025 has many projects by public utilities to improve, maintain, and expand the water line, street light, and sewer infrastructure. So we can only touch on a few tonight. Among the projects are the Moeller Street Overflow Project. It addresses basement flooding, along with keeping wastewater and stormwater separate. We're expanding the Southerly Wastewater Treatment Facility and protecting it from floods. And we're helping the environment and becoming more energy efficient by building a bioenergy facility. It'll generate power for the Southerly Wastewater Treatment Facility through the processing of waste. A sampling of the top projects planned for the south side of Columbus through 2029 are now displayed so you can read through them. There are over $747 million in projects across 8 Columbus communities. Blueprint Columbus projects are prominent in the south side, and I'll talk more about Blueprint Columbus in a few moments. And we have the Three Creeks Sanitary Sewer Tunnel, currently estimated to be a $249 million infrastructure improvement. Now, most of our construction projects are funded with loans that have their own federal diversity goals. Because of this, we're not required to have city diversity goals on our projects. However, the federal diversity goal is only about 2.3% and can be met with companies from anywhere within the state. Even though not required, Public Utilities also has a city diversity goal assigned to each construction project, which is almost always at least 10%. We require companies to meet both the city and the federal goals. Supporting the diversity initiatives of the mayor's office and city council, and helping small businesses grow in Columbus, which benefits all of us. Among the lighting improvements across the city is the Smart Street Lighting Project. This project reduces energy consumption, lowers the city's carbon footprint, and improves safety. Phase 1 is complete. Phases 2 and 3 have started, and we only have 17 more phases to go. The fourth water plant is a major investment in the city's future. It's a new plant that we're building. It's currently being estimated to cost about $2 billion to build between the plant and the transmission lines to get the water to the plant to be processed. Once online, it'll be able to produce 50 million gallons of water daily. So it's perspective time and that interaction time again, so wake back up. So I want to hear your guesses. How many Olympic-sized swimming pools will it be able to fill daily?
1,200.
A million, 10, 1,200. Please forgive them, council members, for they know not which they speak. Somebody say 102.
102.
That's wrong. Just kidding. That's the exact number. 102 Olympic-sized swimming pools daily. And how long will it take to fill Buckeye Lake? We'll go for years this time. 1, that's close enough for tonight. It's 4.5 years. Oh, excuse me, 4.5 days. I greatly underestimated us. 4.5 days, we would have Buckeye Lake filled with that amount of water that we're going to be producing from just that one plant. It will ensure we have a safe and plentiful water supply for the foreseeable future for the citizens of this area. But even a big project like this gets diversity goals. For the site prep and electrical substation construction project we are about to start for the plant, which will start construction of it, we were expecting a 10% diversity goal and just heard word today, it's a 20% diversity goal. We just awarded a professional construction management project for the plant's main water transmission line, and it was awarded to a minority-owned company. $36 million of that $60 million contract will be performed by minority and women-owned businesses, small businesses in Columbus. Another professional construction management contract, this one for the building of the plant, it's in the process of being awarded. 19% of the $45 million, and I'm not going to ask you to do the math, take my word, it's $8.5 million, is expected to be performed by minority and women-owned businesses on that one contract. I mentioned Blueprint Columbus earlier. It was mentioned, well, if you saw the slide and looked at it, you saw 2 or 3 projects on there for the South End. This Blueprint Columbus is a citywide project. This helps keep rainwater out of the sanitary sewers and directs it to storm sewers where it belongs. It has 4 pillars to it. There's green infrastructures. We build rain gardens and porous pavement to slow and clean rainwater before it enters rivers and streams. There's the roof direction pillar, changing downspouts to route rainwater to a pipe that leads to the street, that leads to the sewer in the street. There's the voluntary sump pump pillar, free sump pump installation to prevent basement flooding. And there's lateral lining, and I'm looking forward to this in my neighborhood. This is lining the pipe that connects a residence to the city sanitary sewer. This prevents rainwater from entering cracks in that pipe, and that if rainwater enters cracks in that pipe, it can cause flooding in basements, and it can overwhelm the sanitary sewers. Well, that concludes my overview on what public utility does, and in general, how we plan to spend our capital improvement funds. So this is the point where I get to figure out if I kept you awake or put you to sleep. It's question time, and if you have any questions for me, now is the time.
Well,
I was going to say what? It's that crystal clear.
Well, thank you, Mr. Crawford. Can we give him a round of applause? That's great. I mean, listen, we can have fun. Okay.
Thank you. I'm in town all week.
And also, I'm not offended. I was in the marching band at East High School, so we were the entertainment.
Once again, well, I guess on the athletic field finally.
Now, I will say this. My dad is a proud member of the '79 state champ basketball team, so I will say that, and we'll keep that feather in our hat. So
Yeah, that was
we're
my
going to move
graduation
into.
year. Not a good year.
No, Eastmore doesn't get
I
to
was
chime
not
in
going to
here.
even say anything about Eastmore. I was just going to say I just found out that Deputy Director Winslow actually hired Tom. So I feel like that's a W for him. I'm just saying.
So I need to
Yes.
I need to get Tom. I need to get Steve.
As I say,
Okay, I got it.
Deputy Director Winslow taught me everything I know.
So Tom just got me fired.
We're going to move into the resident testimony and public comment. So as you come up, we first have Mr. Aaron Newman, followed by Ms. Christina Massey, and then also Ms. Sarah Book. Where's the microphone? Okay, we have a wireless mic. So there it is. If you just come up to the mic, again, I said your name, but state your name, any organization that you represent. You have 3 minutes, and we will try to answer those questions or comments from you as best as we can.
Thank you very much, Chair Bankston. Thank you, Councilmember Barosa de Padilla, all the department staff and your teams for having us out. Appreciate it. My name is Aaron Newman, 8844 Atherton Road, speaking with the Far Northwest Coalition tonight. Here to reiterate 3 priority capital improvements that the people of the Far Northwest need. These are not new requests. We've been out the past few years We were happy to highlight these on the bus tour last summer with some folks here in the room and some other city staff. So again, just here to reiterate and hopefully get some updates on some of these items. Namely, Billingsley Road expansion and improvements. It's a tiny, dangerously overused 2-lane road that needs to be expanded. That's been brought to council's attention for more than 10 years now. We need more parks, of course. We'd love to get finally that community center that our residents do in fact need up there. We'd love to host you all at one of these fine meetings sometimes, but right now we've got one little picnic table in Hard Road Park and it wouldn't quite fit us. So again, that community center is needed and hopefully that gets on the capital improvement program sooner than later. And finally, sidewalks along Smoky Row Road, south of Hard Road. About 2015, I think now, we had sidewalks installed north of Hard Road at 1.3 miles. We were hoping that we'd get those extended along south for 1 more mile, but we are still waiting on that. Happy to say that we had some street lights put in, I think, over the springs, again, north of Hard Road, so now those residents have sidewalks and street lights, but our neighbors to the south of Hard Road, where we have higher density, lower income families mostly, are still walking along Smoky Row in the dark and in the mud. So we need those sidewalks and maybe street lights to follow would be great. Again, those three have been brought to attention in years past. I've brought some exhibits, some little illustrations to back some of this up. But really, we just like some updates or answers. And if the answer is no, then we can move on to other things like a splash park or a police substation. Some road resurfacing would be great. But again, those three are sort of our main issues that we're hoping to hear about. And then just 2 quick requests. I'm wondering if there's a way we can maybe sort out the capital improvement budget or program by capital planning area to help us sort of figure out where all those dollars are going and what we can expect to see in our parts of town and get excited for. And then real quick, I know I'm about out of time, but we'd like to keep working with your staffs. Our next coalition board meeting is July 25th. That's our next regularly scheduled. We'd like to add this to the agenda, see if other board members or residents have any comments or questions. We'd love to invite you or anybody from the team up to join us and again, just work with you all before those August votes come along. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you for that testimony, Mr. Newman. I'm going to have our department representatives talk about the community center, road work. I know there's some things that are planned, particularly the old sheep farm and some things, so I'll make sure they update. I do want to talk about what you asked about it being broken up into city plans. We're actually working with finance and our Department of Technology, and it is my hope and my goal, I'm going to push to make sure we have it. We really want the capital budget to be interactive in a GIS map, similar to a lot of our other projects. So we are currently working on that. We just updated the city's website, so it now has that capacity to handle that. So hopefully next year you will see this represented in a map form as well. So not just simply a planning area, but you can drill down to the address of where some of these projects are happening and be able to get that information that you're looking for, because that would be super helpful to all of us. And so definitely hear that critique, and it's one thing that I know that I've raised with our department as well.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and just check out the columbus.gov/capital, and it's already a great site, so appreciate that.
Yep. And so I will go first to, I don't know who wants to go first, if it's public service or Friends of Recreation and Parks, just to, if there is any updates that we can share here briefly, and then if there's more specifics, we'll make sure that we get with you, Mr. Newman, so we can get you your answers.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have specific updates for these specific projects. I know they're not included within this budget proposal per se, but that doesn't mean that they're not on the plan, because there's a lot of projects that are in the works that might not necessarily show up on the budget this year, but they're being designed or they're being scoped or they're being developed. I've made notes. I'll give you my card if you'd like, and I'll follow back up. So.
And I would also say for any roadway projects or sidewalks, also if folks want to reach out to my office, we obviously work very closely with Public Service. One of the things that we've done on council is we've set aside dollars for quick fix projects. We're in the process, as soon as we're working with actually our contractor now for a quick fix project here on the south side. We did another quick fix project on the east side, two actually on the east side. So we review those. Part of that is those quick fix projects are a longer term temporary solution just because we know some of the larger projects. So it could be striping, it could be putting in temporary stop signs, it could be other strategies to meet some of the goals on some of those intersections that we know are problematic. And so for some of them, it would fit that process of a quick fix project. For some of them, again, it might be in the queue for a longer project. So as folks come up, if that is part of your testimony, then also following up with Public Service, but then certainly with our office as well, that's something that we can put on the radar, and then we can reach back out to you as well.
And Mr. Murphy, anything that you wanted to add about Recreation Parks on that side? Yep.
Thank you, Chair Bankston, and good to see you, Mr. Newman. I think we spoke maybe 8 months ago or so on a Zoom call, and so it's good to see you. Like I mentioned during the presentation about our master plan is starting up, and we'll be doing level of service analysis to look at where gaps exist in our community relative to community centers. Today, we don't plan, there's nothing in our, actually, we did put a request into our 6-year capital request, a community center, not saying where that would be, but just putting it in the pipeline as making a request for the future. Our master plan process would help us identify a location should something like that be a priority to be funded by Mayor's office and council in the future. I'll say this, I think based on our last conversation, we were able to put a shelter into the 2024 capital budget, and so that's at Hard Road, and so that's being planned and it's part of a package of other shelters that'll be designed and installed in the next probably 18 months. Oh, and parks are really hard up there. Like we did an analysis before we spoke with you to try and even look at potential properties of interest. We have a 5-year land plan that says if people don't have a 10-minute walk to a park, then that's a real big priority of ours. And so we looked at that area, and it's so difficult to get land up there. But sometimes we're able to whenever a property is being redeveloped, and a developer may owe some parkland dedication land or funds, and so that's a mechanism to do that. In areas like that, it's easier to do it that way, but somebody has to be developing and go through that zoning process that triggers that requirement. Thanks.
Another comment. I did bring with me tonight the Public Utilities Future Budget by Columbus Community, which lists all of our projects for 2024 through 2029 by Columbus Community. So if you'll see me afterwards, if nobody else wants anything from this, I'll just give you the whole thing. But you can at least see if we have anything planned through 2029. And if not, if you want to contact me, I can talk to our Division of Power and find out for any street that you want, if it's in their plans to do in the immediate future.
Thank you for that. And thank you for your continued advocacy, Mr. Newman. Next, we have Ms. Christina Massey, again followed by Ms. Sarah Book, and then Glenn Tumala. I hope I'm not butchering that. So, Ms. Christina, you're up.
Hi, good evening, and Sarah and I are actually here together. We're both with the Buckeye Ranch. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present to you on behalf of families in Columbus whose children are struggling with complex mental health needs. Mental Health in America tells us that in our great state of Ohio, a youth dies by suicide every 32 minutes. The Buckeye Ranch desires to help these local families never experience this trauma. In partnership with Nationwide Children's Hospital, we are expanding our residential treatment campus to provide a higher level of care that did not exist in Ohio until we opened our program in November 2023. Until then, families were forced to send their children outside of Ohio once they completed treatment at Nationwide Children's Hospital. Today, approximately 140 of our children are living outside of Ohio, and another 53 in the state are waiting for this level of care.
We are asking the city to be part of the solution for these youth who are experiencing complex mental health issues. Together, we can provide hope and healing. We are asking for a capital investment of $1 million to complete a construction of a treatment program that is underway and scheduled to be completed in 2025. The partnership between the Buckeye Ranch and Nationwide Children's Hospital has self-funded $20 million, over 50% of the project. We've done that ourselves. We have raised an additional $7 million for a total of $27 million out of the total $35 million psychiatric residential project. We have funds to sustain the operations of the program. We only need the capital infusion to get the building completed. On behalf of the children and families in Columbus, we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you both for your testimony, and also thank you for the work that you all do. Buckeye Ranch is a critical partner for the city, but also for our region. And when you hear those types of numbers, which honestly, as you probably all know, have been exacerbated by the pandemic and so many other things that have happened, it is a critical need. And so thank you for your request. We will definitely make sure that we follow up with the administration to see if that is in one of the outside agency request lineups. I know there's multiple agencies that submitted requests. We are now going through that with the administration just to see where those requests are. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. If one of the departments, I'm not sure which one it sits with, wants to address it, we can, but we will definitely make sure that we look into that for you.
Chair Bankston, let me make sure I give you my contact information before you leave. If you'll call me, we can talk a little bit about your project and what's going on, and we'll see if we can help in some way. Thank you.
Thank you both again for all that you do in our community. That was both Ms. Christina and Sarah? Okay, got it. So now we're looking for Mr. Glenn. And I see, I'm seeing, I don't want to butcher your last name, so I'll let you say it, and then I'll make sure I say it correctly next time I see you.
It's not the first time. Glenn Tumala. I live on the east side. I'm really proud to be a commissioner with the Far East Area Commission. Hey, thank you, everybody. It is fantastic to hear all of your reports and everything. You guys are great. I'm really glad that you're employed by the city of Columbus. You're doing great work. I could not do your job. I'm here to speak to something that applies to everybody in here, and that's the fact that Al Gore was actually right. I know it's shocking, but Al Gore was right. Do you remember that 2006 movie, An Inconvenient Truth? You remember that one? Yeah, I saw it. Well, only now are we being punished by the full impact of climate change. 2023 was the warmest year ever recorded. Now let that sink in, because nobody's let it sink in yet. And 2024 showed Columbus how terrible a heat dome actually is. We had a heat dome in Columbus. It hurts to admit you're wrong, and in this case, it's actually painful. Columbus has been ignoring climate change for years instead of preparing our city for reality. Nobody has taken climate change seriously, not the mayor, and unfortunately not our city council. We need to change course, and change is difficult, but climate change is what's known as a force multiplier. It makes everything more difficult. Everything becomes more difficult with climate change. We're not preparing the city to survive climate change, and it's happening at a faster rate than we thought. Nobody is talking about climate migration. That's on our horizon. And you know, the first step to solve any problem is to admit that there is a problem. I'm ready to admit that Columbus has a serious problem, And I know that the state and federal government, they're not going to help us. They don't know what they're doing, okay? The city of Columbus, we're organized. You're smart. You can make this happen. Everybody get out your phone and do a Google search for Denver Green Code. Hey, I see somebody's doing it. Thank you. Denver Green Code. The city of Denver, it's a beautiful city, by the way. I love it. They've got a green building code. So all the affordable housing that we're investing in, if it was in Denver, it would be built according to their green building code, but not in Columbus, because we haven't made that expectation of ourselves. Also, they're looking at rainwater recycling. They're looking at solar energy and putting panels on the top of city buildings, you know, because you get the investment back and then you get free energy. And everybody knows AEP, they're in the job to make money. They're not in the job to produce electricity. Making money is their number one goal. We need to invest in solar. The city needs to invest in rainwater recycling, geothermal, heat pumps. And last, you know, everybody, you're all Democrats, all right? Democrats are supposed to care about people. You need to care more about our future. You're Democrats. You're not Republicans, all right? You should care more about our future. We need to start planning for climate change, and we need to do it now. Hey, thanks for your time.
All right.
Questions?
Thank you. I will look to, anyone want to respond to that? I mean, and absolutely, I believe that climate change is something that absolutely we should address. And I think that there's a champion in Councilmember White. I think also us as council members, we've been clear about that as well. There are other initiatives that we have done around Blueprint Columbus, aggregating our electric to be all clean energy by a certain time period. And so, yes, these are big things that we have to address. And I think that we are going to do it. But unfortunately, I think that we have state and also federal folks, as you mentioned, that is much bigger than us just here in the city of Columbus. And so I think we are trying to address some of those, but I'll let some of if anybody wants to speak directly to any other sustainability things that we are doing. I mean, we're one of the largest cities to move to citywide recycling, and now do that weekly to make sure that we are putting more into the recycling versus our city dumps. And so that's one way. And so if you're going to let me respond, I'll do that, because we're not going to solve it all on our own. But we are trying to do our part. Absolutely, there's more to be done. Everyone has to do more. All of us have to do more. I'm also making sure that I'm trying to save dying babies who are dying in Linden. We're also trying to make sure that we are having equitable access to health care for families. We're trying to make sure that we also look at carbon pollution in certain neighborhoods that have been left out. So there's a lot that we have to do simultaneously. So just because you don't hear me talking about it every single day doesn't mean that I don't care about it. Every single day I think about my son and what kind of community he's going to grow up in, what kind of nation, what kind of world he's going to grow up in. And so yes, I try to do my small part, but we also have to do our larger part. So any departments want to talk about that? Rec and Parks, I know there's a lot of conservation that we're trying to do with land. I know utilities, there's a lot that we're trying to do with composting and other types of things, if you want to speak to any of those initiatives.
Thank you, Chair Bankston. Recreation Parks has the forestry division within its organization, and in 2021, we conducted a report of the Urban Forestry Master Plan. It did an assessment of our entire our city, and it's for the same reasons you described. I mean, we didn't have the data to understand what our condition is, and we know the value of trees in our community. They have a aesthetic value for sure, but they also cool down communities, they cool down temperature, they clean the air, they provide a lot of value. And so one of the things that we've done is, and through City Council approved it in December, was changed our code for a public tree. Any tree that exists in the public right of way has a code associated with it now. And so if you go up 4 feet from the base, go around the diameter of it, for every inch that tree is, if we cut down that tree, for every inch that tree is, we have to replace for every inch. So a 20-inch tree in diameter provides a huge amount of value to our city, and that's 20, well, it's really 10 2-inch trees that will be replanted as a result of that. So we adopted that in December, and it goes into effect in August. And so our team has been working rapidly with all these other departments to try and figure out how to deploy that without disrupting and stopping all the progress in the city. But in August, we're really excited to launch that code. We did one, we're getting ready to do another. Our canopy is 22%. So if you're looking down at our city, other communities like Charlotte, North Carolina is 42%. I mean, it's just a huge difference in terms of what our canopy is and what it should be. And so we have a goal of getting our canopy up. First, our goal is not to lose any more canopy, and second is to increase it. And we're not going to increase it just by planting and replanting trees on the street, by the curb, that sort of, in the tree lawns. Here on the south side at Stockbridge Park, we backed up to a elementary school. That elementary school was a 10-acre parcel, and it was owned by the schools, vacant for a number of years. It was getting burned all the time. We went in and we purchased that from the schools, tore it down, and planted 2,500 new trees on that parcel. So now Stockbridge Park is a 20-acre park, and it has paths through it. And we planted a variety of species, and now we're looking, because like here on the south side, the canopy is lower than the average. You go to Clintonville and it's 40%. Down here, you're at 19%. So we're looking at how do we do this at mass. So the next site we're looking at is on the west side in Westland, and we're looking at another large planting project there because we're getting ready to receive a donation of 120 acres. It's all old farmland. And so a great way for us to increase our tree canopy. So we've got to shoot for the moon and do things that are out of our norm. We also have in our portfolio the only, at least in central Ohio, net zero building. Our new Fran Ryan Center that I talked about, that'll have solar and it'll have EV charging. So we were at Linden last night, and that has solar panels. So we're really trying. There's a lot of mechanisms to do it. So we're pushing the envelope, and we're part of a team at the city, which is Sustainable Columbus, and a lot of different efforts within, and that's out of the Public Utilities Group, and a lot of different efforts are being pushed together to sort of make the change I think you're talking about.
One thing you want to think about also is the fact that zone-in proposal is coming up, all right? You've got a huge dinner tomorrow or lunch at the Metropolitan. If you approve that without any green building code, that will equate to hundreds of Kmart box apartment high-rises along the corridors, and none of them will be green energy at all. You need to update our building code, which hasn't been done in a while either, so that it reflects that. Look at Denver. Awesome place, man. Awesome. Hey, thank you, Mr. Murphy. You're smart. Listen to that guy. He's smart. He knows what he's talking about.
Glenn, I also wanted to say, I think you're correct. And I think we do have a climate action plan. We do have energy goals. We do have other green goals in each of the departments. And I think, if you went down the line, each department could say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. What that is indicative to me of is that we're not telling the story and wrapping this up in a way that people can wrap their head around some of the things that we're doing around green canopy, around, everything from even some of the things that we talked about with, the Department of Public public service and utilities coming together for thinking about when we put in a sidewalk, including a water basin, not because it's going to collect water today, but because we know climate change is coming and there's a place where we need to collect that water. So what it tells me is that similarly, and we're trying to get better at this and using all the tools that we have, right? I think that sometimes what happens in the bureaucracy of being a city and running a city, things get in the way. And so it's not that the care isn't there, it's not that the intention isn't there, it's that the how we share those stories, how we share that strategy, and how people can engage in it is not there. And so I hear you, I see you. I mean, this is certainly something that we think about. Councilmember White, you know, I think one of the things he talks about is how do we become the greenest city in America, right? And that's certainly something that he's helping to champion. That doesn't mean he's alone in that effort. And so I think that there's ways I would certainly be interested. I mean, we're going to be back here on Thursday evening to have a conversation. We'd be happy to share more about what the climate action plan looks like and then what that looks like across departments, because those strategies are certainly there. I think when we start to parcel them out, it doesn't feel like it's all coming to center, and that's on us. That's on us to better tell that story, because even our partners are part of that. CODA and how we are thinking about our fleet of buses and how they're running on clean energy, how we are going to fuel the buses that are coming with Link Us. Those are all top of mind issues for us, because we understand, I mean, we look at some of the cities that have grown rapidly. I mean, I was just in Phoenix having a conversation about Phoenix is actually they're facing a water shortage in America today, right? And we know that that is happening in communities across the country. And so we don't want to be in that place. And so as we face our growth, it's not just about housing and transportation. It is about how we are thinking about preserving our natural resources. So thank you for your testimony tonight. And thank you for putting that also on our radar about how we need to get better about telling this story and sharing our strategies with the community. Absolutely. I know, we do. You're 100% correct. You're 100% correct.
All right, thank you. And then I know that some of the other deputy directors up here had some initiatives that they're working on as well. So if you want to get with them, or we'll make sure that we get that to you as well. Next we have Ms. Jennifer Chamberlain, followed by Mr. Jim Griffin.
Good evening.
You can adjust the mic if you want.
Yeah, and I know you've spoken at council before, Ms. Chamberlain, but you have 3 minutes, your address and any organization you represent, and then any questions or comments you have.
I'm sorry, did you need my name and address, or did you say?
Yeah, name, address, or any organization that you represent.
Jennifer Chamberlain, Far East Area Commission, Westerville. I live in Westerville. 3 things I wanted to bring up tonight. I would like to invite you all to possibly go back, or consider the idea of possibly going back to having these where there's one on the north side, south side, east side, west side, just so that way when, I know you, because you're on the south side, a lot of what you focused on tonight was south side projects, but that doesn't help the east side, that doesn't get that overview of the projects. So I don't know if you would consider that in the future. Second thing is, as far as rec centers, of course, everywhere where there isn't a rec center, everyone wants a rec center. And I've brought this up to council before. An idea to please consider is, if there is a Y that is in the area where there is not a rec center, figure out the cost of what the budget would be. But if there is a Y where there isn't a rec center and children live within half a mile of it, that the city would then enter into a contract with the Y that the kids in that area could go to the Y instead of building a rec center. I would be more than happy in our area, since we have 2 Ys, one in Whitehall and one in Reynoldsburg, to not have a rec center, but to fund families and kids to go to those Ys. That makes sense. And then the last thing is a question to you all. So the $25 million for Broad Street and McNaughton, I wanted more details on that, and I don't know if you could share the cost breakdown and the time schedule and exactly what it all includes.
And I want to be clear, there's two, for the sake of clarity, and then Steve, you can tell me. So there are 2 different ordinances for, one is for Broad Street, and then there's a specific one for McNaughton. And so the Broad Street one has a portion of McNaughton, but then there's also another one that's specifically for McNaughton.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
the East Broad Street project, the $25 million that just passed council, I believe, was that last week? Yeah, it was last week. So it's going to run from 270 and go east on Broad Street. So starting out around the hospital, run east, I think it goes to Reynoldsburg, New Albany Road, that portion of it. And that's kind of broken up into phases. This would be the first phase. And so we're starting at 270 and going out towards McNaughton Road in this first phase. And it's going to include, basically, we're widening Broad Street because the traffic out there, I'm sure you know, is not really good. It's horrible. So we're widening Broad Street to add additional capacity. And I believe it includes ped and bike facilities as well as upgrading all the traffic signals and intersections. I can get you more specifics exactly what the project is doing and timeframes. If we just pass the ordinance, we'll probably be starting construction within the next 60 days. You're going to probably see contractors out there moving dirt. So, but I'll get you exact timelines and everything if I'll give you my card.
And we can do the same thing for the McNaughton Street project
Yes.
of what that's going to entail. The other thing that I would also let folks know is that there comes a point, I think after the design phase, this is like testing my knowledge of everything that I know. So Steve, you should feel free to correct me. But once we pass the design phase, I believe we do have a website for each one of the projects that you can go to that shows you each phase of the project and then what's happening within each one of those phases of the project. So we can happily share that with both the commission, and then if we want to share it, because I know the community has also been asking, we're happy to share what that looks like with everyone.
I would like to know more because this was earmarked like 2 years ago that MORPC was, this was a project of MORPC's. And then it was a little surprising that the dispatch ran the story that now it's City of Columbus, but I just don't know where the differentiation lies.
The differentiation, we're running the project, so we're building it. We're going to hold the construction contract. We're going to inspect it. We'll do all that. MORPC is providing funding to us through federal funds. So they were awarded federal funds. We applied for them, I'm sure a few years back, at least 3 or 4 years ago. We were awarded federal funds, and it runs through MORPC, and then MORPC pays us. We also have money coming from ODOT in that project also. So there's a lot of different funding sources.
And
that are
there's
bringing
some
it together.
projects that sometimes MORPC will do the study because it's a regional study, and then we take that, then they essentially help to share that information with us. So MORPC is a regional planner, just so everyone's on the same page, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning. Yeah, they don't do construction, they do a lot of the planning. And so, you know, especially with roadway projects, especially on major intersections, it affects the entire region, right? Because if we put a light somewhere or a stop sign, if we do anything that interrupts traffic, it interrupts it along the whole line or that whole corridor, which is why usually MORPC is involved. So there's an effort called Complete Streets, which is essentially how we plan streets. And MORPC is the one who looks at it because they put all the municipalities together to talk about how we think about infrastructure, how we think about those streets, how it affects the flow of traffic. And then MORPC essentially shares that with the municipalities who then adopt that essentially that guidebook, I guess, if you want to put it in layman's terms, right? And then that's essentially how we approach, how we reconstruct and make street changes. And so that's how they are our partner with us, similar to, Link Us, MORPC is a partner, because again, that is taking on, because MORPC or Link Us will run through not just Columbus, it runs through other municipalities, Reynoldsburg, Whitehall, some townships, et cetera. So that's why they're a partner, and you'll usually see it, something may start there, or we may get some funding from them, but they're a very close partner of ours in everything that we do.
And the McNaughton Road project that just passed council too, that's a design contract. So we're entering a design contract with a consultant to design a shared use path, and it's going to run from Main Street to Broad Street. So that was the initial contract start. I think it was like $500,000, and then we'll come back and add more money to it. So
Okay, yeah, I know MORPC earmarked $7 million towards that. So, yep.
Yeah, for construction. Yeah. So we're starting the design process now. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Next, we have Mr. Jim Griffin. Is Jim with us? No? I know that Jim filled out a speaker slip, so my office will reach out to him to make sure we get his testimony. We have Mr. Dean Smith. No Dean? Okay. All right, we will also reach out to Mr. Dean to get his testimony. Ms. Sharon Rastatter. Did I get that right? Okay. Madam Commissioner.
Hello, my name is Sharon Rastetter. I live in the Far West Side Area Commission area, and I chair the Far West Side Area Commission. First off, I wanted to thank Council Member and Finance and Governance Committee Chair Nick Bankston, District 2 Council Member Nancy DeAckar, who's not here, aides to other council members, and the many department directors and staff who traveled to the Far West Side 2 weeks ago for a bus tour of the Far West Side, and specifically the areas and the parks where we've requested budget items. Most of those, actually all of them, are repeats, but we're actually seeing some of our past requests are coming closer to fruition, so that's great, but of course we can always have some more. As a 30-year resident of the Far West Side and nearly lifelong resident of Central Ohio, I've seen the area grow and the positives and less than positives that accompany that growth. In the Far West Side, we have few recreational outlets available, and most are not within walking distance of residents, and especially without sidewalks or multi-use paths. In addition, many residents lack vehicles or operating vehicles and rely on foot power to get groceries, to get to a COTA bus stop, or to get to work, but risk injury or worse walking along busy Roberts Road, Walcott Road, and more roads without sidewalks or multi-use paths. Our ask the past several years, and again this year, is for connecting existing sections of sidewalk along Roberts Road, Walcott Road, Frizzell Road, and other spots as noted in our budget request. We are also asking for separated bike and multi-use paths along Walcott, Roberts, and Hilliard-Rome Road. Buffered bike lanes currently have few to no users along Hilliard-Rome and Roberts Road, as both of those routes have posted speed limits of 45 miles an hour, and few motorists follow that. Hilliard-Rome Road and Roberts and Hilliard-Rome Road Treby-Renner intersections are frequent top 10 most dangerous intersections according to MORPC, and that's for vehicles, let alone for pedestrians or cyclists. Along Roberts and Hilliard-Rome, there is a concentration of residences under the management or ownership of CMHA and other nonprofit organizations with income restrictions for residents. None of these offer recreation for adults, and few offer any for children. With Franks Park, the Mudsock Trail, and the Spindler Sports Complex available but not accessible, at least not safely, unless by a car, these recreation outlets remain off limits to all Far West Side residents. A double roundabout is under design for the Roberts-Frizzell-Spindler intersections, and with it, as we understand it, a 2-block length of sidewalk on the north side of Roberts Road. Please find a way to fund additional sections leading from Mudsock Trail to Hilliard-Rome Road. If not on the north side, then on the south side. On the north side, part of it is the city of Hilliard, so I'm sure that would have some right-of-way restrictions. There are bits and pieces of sidewalk along there, but not closer until later on. So we'd request that. In addition, we have 2 neighborhood pocket parks, a larger park and a sports park, and another park that's nothing more than a pothole-riddled parking lot. We'll be reviewing our priorities, as Craig Murphy has directed us, as far as upgrades, programming, kind of which direction to go with that. Again, we thank you for the opportunity to request safer alternatives to walking along the berm of heavily traveled roads where cars frequently reach speeds more than 55 miles an hour for all Far West Side residents. We look forward to the Rec and Parks upgrades currently budgeted and under discussion. And of course, we'd also love to have a rec center. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it was a pleasure to go on the bus tour with you, and I think really eye-opening for me and educational, and so I really appreciate it. I think when we think about the far reaches of our city, we often think that those are just people that just drive. But when you go out there, there's many folks who want to walk and need to walk. And so I know we had representatives from Public Service as well as Recreation and Parks who got to see those firsthand. And so we will continue to work. I know there were some things that you mentioned that were already on the list for Public Service. I know we're working to compile that to get that back to you. So I just wanted to thank you for your advocacy and thank you for taking that time to taking us on that bus tour, because it makes a difference coming out there to see it again. Very large city. And if you haven't been out to the Far West Side, I mean, when we talk about growth, I thought that we were experiencing a lot of it on the Northeast side, but the growth is tremendous out there on the Far West Side, from economic development and jobs to housing of all types, single family to multifamily. And so it was fascinating to see. So thank you again for taking the time and all that you do in that community. Councilmember, do you want to add anything at all?
No, I was just going to say, I know that we had a conversation at the West Side Community Center, and I know that Kane was on the bus tour. I was very sad that I was out of town, so could not make it on that day. But I know that some of these, Steve and I were furiously writing these down, because I know that we are addressing some of these concerns, and there's some that we need to figure out. I think, again, putting some things on that priority list so that we can understand what's on the docket, and then getting that back to you, and then continuing this conversation. Because again, as we look at whether it's quick fixes or when we have other roadway projects, especially with that street paving, that's where we get the opportunities to do some shared use path and to do some other things with the streets. So I'm happy to see that, again, we're making that progress, but it's just that continued conversation and knowing what's a priority. But I'm glad that we've been able to make some movement since the first time we talked, so thank you.
And next we have Ms. Debbie Hampton, followed by Mr. Derek Bergman. She's not here? Oh, you're not speaking, okay. Well,
Debbie Hampton is next.
well, Miss Deb, you are here, so if, all right, got it. I got it. So she echoes what Ms. Rastetter said, there you go. Next we have Mr. Derek Bergman, followed by Mr. Robert Patterson. I don't see Mr. Patterson. So then we'll be followed by Reverend Aaron Hopkins. Mr. Bergman, go ahead. You have 3 minutes, your name, address, or any organization you represent, and then we'll make sure we address any questions you have.
Thank you so much. So my name is Derek Bergman. Good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity here today. So I am a resident of Franklinton, representing the Franklinton Area Commission. Grateful for the opportunity to share more about our neighborhood's needs regarding capital projects and capital investments. Our submitted requests to City Council represent the full voice of Franklinton, informed by a comprehensive survey we conducted of the neighborhood to identify where investment would be most impactful. For context, one of the guiding factors for our neighborhood's requests is the recognition that Franklinton has the lowest life expectancy of all neighborhoods in Columbus, 17 years below the average for the state of Ohio. While this is the result of many socioeconomic factors, one meaningful investment City Council can make in our neighborhood is the development of additional green spaces and improving the overall tree canopy, which currently sits at 15% for our neighborhood, where Franklinton has suffered from significant underinvestment over the last few decades. Franklinton has at least 70 fewer acres than recommended parkland amounts and scored third most vulnerable neighborhood in the Urban Forestry Master Plan's social equity analysis, made worse by the recent decimation of trees by ODOT along Highway 70. Our capital improvement request detailed time-sensitive opportunities around new park acquisition and development, enhancements to Dodge Park, McKinley Park, Glenwood Avenue, and Sullivan Gardens that could immediately have an impact on improving air quality, health, and well-being of Franklinton residents. In the same vein of health and safety, residents' second most frequent concern is the lack of safe walking paths, even for children going to and from neighborhood schools. Significant stretches of Franklinton, specifically south of Sullivan, west of 315, have crumbling or completely non-existent sidewalks and a dangerous lack of crosswalks at major intersections. City Council's investment in sidewalks and crosswalks as detailed in our Commission's request would have wide-ranging positive impacts, making it easier for children to get to school, for residents to access parks and libraries, and for those visiting Franklinton to more easily navigate the neighborhood and patronize local businesses. Our third priority focused on the safety and accessibility of major alleyways, specifically one that has frequently and recently been a point of concern, as emergency vehicles have been unable to effectively or efficiently reach and navigate Irene Alley. This poses obvious risks to the residents along that alley and neighboring streets if emergency vehicles aren't able to easily enter or leave the vicinity. And we would greatly... Oh,
I
sorry.
don't want you to go too far.
That was Irene Alley?
Irene, okay.
Thank you. So it poses obvious risks if emergency vehicles can't effectively get in or out of that area, and we would greatly appreciate City Council's attention and support in mitigating that risk before there's a tragedy associated with it. Altogether, we believe these requested investments in parks, sidewalks, and alleys would be feasible, reasonable, cost-effective, and immediately impactful for our neighborhood's residents' health, safety, and quality of life. So definitely echoing the request for a map associated with those projects, not expecting you all to have memorized every project in every neighborhood, but if it would be possible for us to follow up with you all or to have a representative at our commission to identify what might be happening in Franklinton. We tried to look at the 5-year plan and only saw one of our 13 requests noted somewhere in there, so we would greatly appreciate help identifying what those might be.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman, and we'll definitely try to get that to you as far as breakdown. I know that I saw Sullivan Gardens and some of the other parks that you mentioned as well with some improvements, not sure what they are, but we'll get that to you. And again, I just want to thank you for your service. I'm biased. I served on the Franklinton Area Commission. We didn't get this chance to serve together, but glad to see that it's thriving and still have great advocates like yourself. So thank you. And did any of those projects that spit out, did any directors, did you guys want to respond to any of those just now?
I could jump
Murphy, yeah.
on a couple of these. Councilmember Bankston, I believe someone from our team might have been at the Franklinton Area Commission meeting recently, maybe a few weeks ago, to talk about some of our plans for the area. So in the 2024 capital budget, we have $600,000 to make improvements to the Sullivan Garden Community Center. We also have $370,000 to improve the green space, which is to the east of the community center. And that'll be an athletic field for pickup sports and that sort of thing. Probably 2-3 years ago, we put in the futsal court there and added new playgrounds and all new benches and so a lot of things outside. And now we were just there probably 2 weeks ago at the center, starting to talk about what some of our plans are for the renovations there. And then through Franklinton, we're doing the Street Island project, which is we have these huge, amazing street islands in Franklinton. I mean, they're as wide as this building or this room, and so we're putting some playgrounds and paths and things. So we're kind of maximizing what we do have because it's so dense there. It's been hard for us to acquire, but we are acquiring some green space. I believe we're buying 2 parcels. One is formerly a church. It's like all coming back to me now. So we're being pretty aggressive in an area that's very priced out. But this particular church and this property owner wanted it to go as a park. And so we've had that ability to do that. And then again, McCoy Park is just down the road on Harmon, and that's where we'll be building a very important community park there, which will back up to McCoy Park and have all those therapeutic recreation programs nearby. So I think there's a lot of sort of good momentum happening there. And if we just need to better communicate what we're doing, we're happy to do that. Thanks.
And if you could also make sure that I would love for my office to see what some of those priorities were in terms of public service in particular, because I know especially right now in Franklinton, there's so much, well, parts of Franklinton, there's a lot of development that's coming, which has slowed down some of the things that we have in process, and we're waiting. I know that even some of the projects that we had talked about doing, we're waiting essentially till that was done, because there's things that have to be paced. But Irene Alley is something that we'll definitely look into and get back to you on, just to understand what some of the challenges are there.
Completely understand, thank you. And-
Yeah, our alley program is actually done in-house, so it's not a capital budget request that we make every year, so we perform those services with our infrastructure management group. So I wanted to make sure I wrote that alley down, because I can make sure that's on someone's list somewhere, that when our crew goes out and is inspecting these alleys, that gets looked at, so. And as far as, there is a budget item, I believe it's in their carryover funding, for East Franklinton sidewalks. So I don't have the specifics in front of me, but I can follow up with you on what sidewalks that entails. But there's about $4.6 million in sidewalks that's going on in that area, so that I will get you details on.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Mr. Bergman. And I will say, one thing I know in particular that we have been doing in partnership with Recreation and Parks and Department of Development, and this is, I think, key for places like Franklinton and other places that are seeing large amounts of development, is encouraging developers to put in green space that's not just for their residents, but also accessible to the public. And so I know that we've seen a lot of developers setting aside green space for that to be public parks that they, well, one, maintain, but are set aside as public parks. And so more instances where we can have that, I think that's how we can get more green space into places like Franklinton, which in many cases is one of the older parts of our city, right? So it's much denser and it's much more concrete than some of our other parts. And so I think that's a way that we can also look at how we get more green space. So thank you again. Again, Mr. Patterson, I know it's not here, but Mr. Patterson has my cell phone. I have his. I'll just call him and get his testimony. And so to round us out, we have Mr. Reverend Aaron Hopkins. And so we'll let you go. Absolutely. Yep, we'll get you.
Grace and peace, Council Chair Bankston, Council Lourdes Barrosa de Padilla.
There you go.
Okay. And to all you deputy directors, we want to greatly thank you all for your passionate attention to our city and to just giving us this presentation and information this evening. I am Minister Aaron Hopkins, Family Missionary Baptist Church. Pastor Fred Lamar is my overseer and shepherd there. I'm not coming in that official capacity. I'm also Southside Area Commission for Religious and Social Services. I'm not coming in that capacity. Also civic president of Southside Community Action Network, where I am the active president, and I've been a 33-year resident of Wilson Avenue at 1241, where I have raised my 6 children and now have 24 children. And but I am coming in the capacity of executive director of I Can Do Community Development, that has a program of Southside Southside Family Farms. I am an urban farmer as well as a rural farmer. We have 2 acres out in Johnstown, Ohio, where we are actively producing. We farm 2 land bank properties on Wilson Avenue, and a farm stand that is under development from funding from then Council Priscilla Tyson, who provided $22,000 to establish that farm stand, and like a wash and pack and refrigeration. I'm coming on behalf of the youth of our community that have been affected by the social determinants of health that is often overlooked. We are petitioning in this capital budget that maybe that you would consider maybe $100,000 investment at 1555 Gilbert Avenue is a facility that has a 225 square foot building, as well as, I'm not sure of the square footage around the chain link area. We would like to establish a controlled environment agricultural climate smart facility, utilizing some of the other things I've heard discussed in this room. We grow using sustainable agricultural practices. We have grants that, from the city, that we educate youth on the south side and other communities, and through other partnerships with Franklinton Farm. We had a USDA urban infrastructure grant, and so we even met a Leslie Glover. I don't know if that's any kin to you, Council Chair Leslie Glover. He is a USDA program manager for one of those grants, office in you. And so we would like to have discussion about any possibility of being able to assist these young people, even in a 4-H club that would be housed there, and just to further help them understand climate change and smart solutions and economic development as we build a food system. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Hopkins, for all the work that you're doing. I know that my team, as well as Councilmember Remy's team, had a chance to go tour all of the sites at the Southside Family Farms, and it's quite amazing work that you are doing there. And as me and you have spoke privately, and I say that when we talk about vertical growing and urban growing, that is the future of growing in the kind of climate change and everything that we're dealing with. This is a way for us to get ahead of it and to make sure that children from the inner city are exposed to that is so critically important. So thank you for your advocacy. I know that we talked about that request, and I did have a chance to tour it. So it's definitely something that's on my radar. Again, we will go back with the administration to look at those outside agencies to see who is funded and who's not, and make sure that we're advocating for that. Last but not least, Mr. Commissioner, we're in your house, so I'm gonna let you close us out. How about that? And then also, while he's coming, if we could just give a round of applause to our firefighters for hosting us here at the Fire Academy. Our firefighters are some of the hardest working frontline workers, the folks that were there on the front line for us during the COVID pandemic and show up time and time again. And so I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge them and that we're here at the Fire Training Academy. With that, Mr. Commissioner, you'll close us out, so just give us your name, address, any organization you're with.
I've just been commissioner maybe 2-3 months at the most.
Oh, so you're a senior commissioner then?
They pulled me out of the woods anyway. What I'm here to talk about is the Division of Refuse Collection. When I first started at the city, was 30 years ago, whatever, they kept talking about this new system to come in. Anyway, it was these side-loading trucks and all kinds of stuff. Okay, well, I trained for them. I was the first supervisor to be put out for them. The area I had was all the way from downtown to Nelson Road, from Leonard Avenue to Livingston Avenue. I had 5 trucks, and we were changing over from the trash to the side loaders. 300-gallon containers were 300 for one day's work. 495 was for one day's work.
Can you step into the mic for us?
Oh, and that's what we did at that time. All of a sudden, there was no more communications when I left. The trash in the city of Columbus is terrible. Where I live at and where I started at, that's how I ended up being a commissioner. I went to work. I talked to everybody in the sanitation department, from the heads. There's no communications for one. There's no more people in which that they decide to either talk to each other, the community, they leave trash. I mean, it's a big mess. I've talked to not only them, I talked to Rumpkin. One time, Rumpkin cussed me out, and I had to take his truck number, turn it in to get him to straighten up what he was doing. So I'm just here to talk about the city sanitation department. It needs more communications. Plus, at the time that we were working, we had a rapport where the trucks were clean, the guys who worked on the trucks were clean. I also took the trucks down to a place called Shore Street where they were worked on. I also worked the container area, the side loader area, and the rear loader area. I did all this myself. I'm saying all that to say this now, there's no communications. I've talked to several people from the city. I've even invited them to my house. I asked them, what's going on with the trash in the city of Columbus? No communications. I'm just here just to explain that and hope that maybe somebody will get them guys together and explain to them that this is a new city, clean city, but the trash is bad. Trash is everywhere. I can take you and put all of y'all in a truck, in the car with me now, and drive you over half the city, and it's trash on the ground, trash in people's yards, trash in the streets, trash everywhere.
Let me say, Mr. Commissioner, thank you for your public service. One, service to the city of Columbus, and you're clearly a glutton for punishment because now you're serving in another public service role. But no, we appreciate that, and I just want to first say thank you to that. I'll have our public service talk about, I know, some of the investments that we're making around equipment and refuse that will help with that, some of the things that we've done around illegal dumping, but also, too, I think part of this is an education campaign as well, is how do we ensure that folks are properly bagging their trash, making sure that those types of things are happening. I see it even in my neighborhood, right, where you have trash lids that are just open, and folks don't know. Just call 311. We'll get you a new trash can, right? We'll make sure that it's fixed. Or you have folks that are just putting open trash into their trash can, and when that arm goes up, as you know, it goes throughout the entire neighborhood. So I think this is both an education thing and why great folks like you on the commission are so needed to make sure we're educating our residents, but it's also about an equipment thing and how do we be more efficient because I think it's a shortage of workers and things that we're finding, but how are we being more efficient with the equipment as well? So Deputy Director, I'll kick it over to you, or if there's anything I missed or that you want to add.
Oh, no, Commissioner, no, I'd like to just add, yeah, it is a bad problem with the city right now, and we are really taking a strong effort to try to clean up some of our streets and some of our right-of-way that's out there. And a lot of it is communication, and we're making a bigger push in the next year or two of getting out there and getting people and say, what's right to recycle? How do you bag your trash? You know, just to educate them. There's a big educational factor that needs to happen. Our trucks are making a big investment, $8.8 million this year. That's probably more than we've gotten in the last couple years, just to get some of our newer trucks and get some of those automated side loaders that you were talking about to help us out and automate the process. We do have weekly recycling now, so there's kind of an education curve there to let people know still what is good to recycle, when to put out your trash and your recycling, and really concentrate on cleaning up our alleyways. One of the big initiatives, and you've probably seen it, is we've taken away the 300-gallon containers.
Yeah.
So we put out 90 gallons because the 300-gallon containers in our alleyways are just dumping grounds.
Yeah.
It's a magnet for people just to throw trash around and in those 300 gallons. So that's a big initiative, and it should be completed by the September this year. All of their 300-gallon containers will be gone, and will be all 90 gallons. So there's some educational part to that too. But yeah, you're right. We need to do better in our communication and actually have our refuse people out there talking to the neighborhoods. And I'm going to take that back to the administrator of the refuse collection division and say, and we need to up our game a little bit and get out in the community.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you again. And between that and again, Mr. Tumala's advocacy, we're not going to have no trash to pick up because we're going to be green. So again, everybody take a deep breath and give yourself a round of applause. That was our last speaker. I appreciate you guys. And again, I appreciate it again because going through $1.99 billion is a lot. So thank you all for sticking in there with us. Again, I wrote down that comment, Commissioner Chamberlain, about the different sides of town and making sure we bring that back. We tried a different model this year to try to streamline it. We did get the capital budget a little later than usual, so we wanted to try to streamline it because there are some projects that are time sensitive, but absolutely hear you about making sure that we have those on different sides of town because it does make a difference, and so we will make sure we do that. I'm also going to instruct my staff to try to work with the administration to try to compile everything that you've seen here to put it into as neat a list as we can by area commission to get that to you all so that you'll be able to digest that and share that with your respective communities. Well, seeing no additional comments or questions from my colleagues or those watching, I will say this concludes this evening's hearing. I will, before I close up my thank yous, any closing remarks from you, council member?
No, just thank you again. I mean, again, I think so many of you, these are not unfamiliar faces. You are our partners. You help to make this work better. I think that what we continue to hear is how are we more transparent? How do we better share information so people know what's going on? How do we continue conversations? I think Councilmember Bankston and I ran together, and I think this is something that we saw both. We are Columbus kids, and I think growing up in this community, living in the neighborhoods where we grew up, I think this was something that we certainly felt, and something that we wanted to bring to our service to the city. And so continue to push us on those things, continue to advocate for the things that folks care about. I think we always talk about not agreeing, but I think it's also understanding that what we are in agreement on is that the solutions don't come fast enough, and that's something that's frustrating to all of the folks who are here because of the line of work that we're in. But what is important is that we do celebrate those small wins. We celebrate every time we inch closer to making our city more that we're bringing prosperity to our city, that we're making it safer for our residents, that we're bringing those things that we all want for our community, that we really are bringing equity, true equity. We're meeting communities where they are, and we get better and better each and every time, and that is because of all of you. So I want to thank the folks who are here tonight for their service. Thank you to the folks who have been watching, who have been emailing our council offices or calling our offices, because it really does make a difference in our thinking. It makes a difference in our decision making and how we move forward as a city, and you are all a big part of that, so we appreciate that.
Thank you to my partner in good, and thank you for all your advocacy. I think she said everything I would say. I just want to again echo thanks to our department heads and the mayor as well for presenting this budget to us. Also to all of my colleagues, those, again, Councilmember Rosa DePadia, who is here, also all of the other council colleagues who have been engaged in this process. I know Dave engaged probably with you all individually or in some capacity, and so looking forward to having a dialogue with them over the next couple of weeks. And again, thank you to all of the residents. Just to reemphasize, this sort of civic participation is essential for municipal government to operate effectively. And this is why, even this back and forth, even when there is challenges and things that come before us, I don't take it personal. Because this is why I love local government, is because we can get to the issues and that we are here in the community with you. So thank you all for engaging with us. This is the last of our hearings for this year's capital budget. But again, you can continue to engage with us. Please reach out to any of our offices. You can reach out to my office, Jonathan Brown, who is in the back, my legislative analyst, J.B. Brown at columbus.gov. Also use that www.columbus.gov/capital, where you can go through this in more detail. They'll give you time to, I think, look at certain line items, ask us questions, and make sure we get that back to you as well. Council plans on voting on this capital budget, again, by our August recess. That is the current tentative timeline, so by July 29th. Again, there are some key projects that are time sensitive, so please keep an eye out on council social media pages as well as all official communication channels for City Council to see when this will hit the agenda. But again, continue to give us your feedback because that is the only way that we will continue to make the city better together. With that, have a great evening, and thank you so much for being here.